Hello. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:32. Everybody, we all ready? Going to call the meeting to order, guys. No, it's 6:32. Call the order. Okay. Go ahead with a roll call.
Commencing roll call now. Rebecca Carabes,
Present.
Marco Durazo, Michael Fisher, Alexis Lewis,
Present.
Bill Mickler,
Present.
Shirley Melnico,
Present.
Kalima Salahudin,
Present.
Rob Solano,
Here.
James Simmons.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. So before we get started this morning, I would like to introduce our new youth liaison from the San Mateo County Youth Commission, Bethany Zhao. Yay. Do you want to just join us at the podium here for a quick sec, to tell us a little bit about yourself? So Bethy and I have history because she is from my school district, Jefferson Union High School District, and a student at Westmore High School. And if you want to tell, oh, I'm so sorry. So Bethany and I, there we go, have some history because she is from my school district, the Jefferson Union High School District, and she is a member of Westmore High School. And I will let you tell a little bit more about yourself.
Hi everyone. As Kalima said, I'm Bethany and I'm a student in JHSD. I've had the privilege of being on the Youth Commission for 2 terms now, and I was recently appointed by my fellow commissioners to serve as the Youth Commission liaison to this wonderful commission. So I am really excited to be here, and I want to thank you all so much for welcoming me.
Thank you so much. That's it. Yeah. She's a rock star, and we're very lucky to have her. So now this is the time in our agenda for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Again, just a reminder that we have a limit for 2 minutes per comment, and I'll turn it over to our clerk.
Thank you. We will now move on to item number 2, general public comment. This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the Independent Civilian Advisory Commission on a topic within jurisdiction of the Commission, but that is not on the agenda. Public comments on matters on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. Please fill out a speaker slip, or for those joining online, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. The Commission may not discuss or take any action on items not on the agenda. We did receive one written comment prior to the meeting, and they were shared to the commissioners and posted to the Advisory Commission website. We will begin with in-person public comment. We have one speaker slip. I'd like to call David Vallegra to the podium.
Thank you. I think there may be others who have already submitted slips too, I hope anyway. My name is David Valerga, and I've been here before to talk with you. I'd like to talk about time. You know, this whole commission is a study in entities. One of the entities, of course, is the Sheriff's Department itself. And if it takes you a really long time to get going with this, to go through all of your training and such, that's okay with them, because their timeline is such that if you never ask them any hard questions, they won't have to give you any answers. So it is in their benefit to delay. The other entity is staff. Staff's interest is similar to the Sheriff's Department's in that they have been tasked with the responsibility of organizing this. But if you never get going, they won't have to deal with any of the issues that you bring up. So delay is on their side. Another is the public. The public generally is concerned about what's going on. Many people have worked for quite a while to get this going. And for the public, this is urgent. Every day that goes by is a problem. The fourth one is, of course, the commission itself. And the commission needs to be prepared to deal with the things it has to do. But it also needs to understand the importance of getting things finished and getting things going as soon as you can. Fortunately, your leadership has already recognized this and has already cut out some of the things that might otherwise have delayed your commencement. But I urge you to do everything you can to cut through as much red tape as you can, to get to going as soon as you can, because frankly, you're going to reduce risk for the county and the public when you get going I urge you to continue working on getting going quickly.
Thank you. Okay, we do have one more speaker slip. Okay. I'd like to call Lauren McCombs to the podium, please.
I feel badly to have my back. I'm not used to this as a preacher, but to have my back to the audience, but I will speak forward and do my best. So good evening to all of you who are present there tonight and to those who are attending via Zoom. My name is Deacon Lauren Patton McCombs, and I come before you at this time as an ordained deacon of the Episcopal Church. I'm a member of Peninsula Solidarity Cohort, Faith in Action Bay Area, and a coalition for a safer San Mateo County. All of us here tonight have learned that our sheriff's office is facing extremely difficult and trying times. There are numerous lawsuits for various infractions against the sheriff's office, which is extremely concerning to all of us present here and beyond. It seems to me that given all that is going on for our sheriff and her staff right now, that this is a perfect opportunity to recognize the importance of having an oversight committee that operates independently, which will provide transparency and an avenue for ongoing communication. I acknowledge and realize that the challenge that the sheriff and her staff are facing can be extremely stressful. I encourage all parties involved, including yourselves and all the work you're doing, to take time to quiet your minds and to find peace in ways that work for you. This evening, I want to simply offer my prayers to all the parties that are involved. May you know that your service to our county is essential to the overall well-being of all who live here. May you know that you are appreciated for your efforts in serving our county. May you find peace and breathe through the many challenges and obstacles that you are facing right now. All this we ask in the name of one Spirit that unites us all together in compassion and love for one another. I will say amen as my tradition. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for in-person public comment. Okay, we'll move on to public comment on Zoom. We currently have 4 hands raised. I'll begin with Eric Sapp, followed by Bill Newell. Apologies. We'll begin with Elsa Schaefer, and followed by Eric Sapp. Elsa, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Elsa Schaefer. I live in Menlo Park and have lived in the county 40 years. This is where we brought our family up. I chair I'm vice chair of the San Mateo County Democracy for America group, and have led for a good number of years, over a decade, their task force, which is on voter integrity. I'm so happy to know that the League of Women Voters this year has been able to get into the jails to be able to register voters. And I think the data is from 2 years ago that only 6 people voted from inside who were incarcerated at the time. But I know that now they have 100 people whom in the last 3 meetings they've been able to register. And I would love to have this be high on the ICAC's agenda as an easy win-win for everybody, for the sheriff's office because such positive things are happening, for the voters themselves, obviously, because they have a voice that way, and for all the rest of us to feel good. We're doing right in ensuring people do have voices. The interesting thing is that so there are 4 floors in the jail they were in, and they're allowed to do 1 floor at a time, which means each person gets 1 visit. You don't get a refresh a month later of, oh, so here's what we told you before, and now here's how you can really register if you haven't yet, or here are updates on whatever it is. It's all very much nonpartisan, but I think it'd be a wonderful win-win, really win-win-win for the ICAC to bring up as one of the first things on your agenda once you, in the new year, have one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric Sapp. You may begin when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Eric Sapp, staff attorney at Legal Services for Prisoners with Children and a longtime resident of Redwood City. Following up on the theme from the previous speaker about voting in jails, I was attending the Voter Education and Outreach Committee that the Elections Division convenes, and an official from the Elections Division was noting that they do not currently have the data necessary to provide official figures on the number of registered voters in jail and the number of actual voters in jail over a given period of time, whether it be averages or stock variables, because they need the they basically would need lists of incarcerated persons and then compare them against their own lists of voters who have registered and cast ballots. They were interested in cooperating with such a data collection process. I think within the purview of this body for its advisory role and its, however, limited investigatory capacities might, and a good role might be to help facilitate that data exchange between the Sheriff's Department and the Elections Division so that we can have a precise and scientifically accurate picture of the voting, the exercise of voting rights by the incarcerated population in the San Mateo County jails. Thank you very much for your work, and keep up the efforts of maintaining accountability.
Thank you. Next will be Bill Newell, followed by Raymonds. Bill, you may begin when you're ready.
Hi, good evening, members of the Independent Commission. Just to follow up on a little bit what Elsa and Eric have already said, we have a good start now. In the past, we've come to you, I should say by way of background, my name's Bill Newell, and I'm a member of the South San Mateo League of Women Voters. And so you've heard several of my colleagues who were able to get into the jail over the last couple months. And amazingly, we've gotten close to 100 women in the women's jail at Maple Street. It's a good start. Our next concern will be, now that we've got these people registered, that they need to get their ballots. And when they get their ballots, we need to be sure they get an opportunity to vote. And then furthermore, we need to assure them that their ballots get submitted and will be counted. This all, again, can be done much more effectively through volunteers like we've had coming in. But we need to increase our efforts. We need to have better access. We need to have more transparency. As was already noted, we have very little data on voting within the jail, so we don't know that. There really is no past history. We do know there's 500 and some odd beds, 76 beds in Maple Street, so we've registered maybe close to 25% of the people there. That's good. What we don't know is how much access people have within the jail when the league comes in to access our help for getting them registered. We're not sure quite how many people really knew that we were coming in, and when we did, and it was noted before, we were only able to access one pod or one level of the jail at a time. So it's good news that we're making progress, but we need to do more, and we need to assure that everybody gets a chance to of their constitutional right to vote, and that their vote is submitted, their vote is submitted, and their vote's counted. So we need to follow through on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next hand is Raymond's. Please begin when you're ready.
Good evening. My name is Raymond Goins, and I'm with Fixing San Mateo. I'm here to speak about mail in San Mateo County Jail and the importance of it. Jail mail, habit mail. I'm formerly incarcerated for all transparency, and I know while I was incarcerated, receiving mail from somebody like my grandmother was important to me, because at times when I was at a state of despair, often the only time that kept me hope and gave me air under my parachute to keep me afloat in those trying times was a letter from my grandma that was written in her writing, and I could always refer back to it and smell those letters and see that my grandma cared about me enough to write it. it was a humanization component that's lost while you're incarcerated. Not allowing the incarcerated individuals to have mail while they're incarcerated, it dehumanizes them. It takes out the humanity standpoint of what family means. The tangible thought process that somebody cared enough about you to write you a letter and to share with you and to share their thoughts with you. How many of you guys have received a birthday card from somebody that you love and that's no longer here, but you always kept it as a momentum? Not having a tangible mail in county jail takes away that memory that you have. I understand that people are incarcerated, but they're incarcerated, but they're still human beings, and they still need compassion and humanity in their life. Part of the rehabilitation process to reintegrate back into society is being reminded that we're human, right? That people care about you. Having to share a tablet to read mail when you're at a time of despair is only a recipe for disaster. If you were in a cell and you just got bad news and you want to go read a letter from your grandma that's no longer here, that's passed away, they give you hope. You can't do that how it currently stands in San Mateo County Jail. I actually them saying just to ban the electronic mail and let those folks that are incarcerated to receive mail from their loved ones, so that way they could be reminded by sense and touch that they're loved and they're cared for. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for public comment. There are no more hands raised.
All right, thank you so much for everyone that gave comment. I'm now going to move on to have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Approve anything that's on here, like the minutes?
No,
we-
we're just
no, just
approving the
accept.
agenda.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So are you're an aye? You're yes? Yeah, got it, great. Okay, now we're moving on to the agenda. And so on the agenda, we have the August 21st, September 4th, and September 18th minutes for approval. Before I call for a motion, I know Shirley, you had a comment. I just want to give you space if you wanted to share.
Yes, I would love to see these minutes rewritten because they don't reflect anything other than the agenda. And so we've had a lot of comments, and I think, if you could even use AI or something to do the minutes, but I would not approve these minutes as they're written because they don't say anything.
All right. So with that, unless there's any other comments. Nope. Do you want?
There was a written communication before the meeting expressing concern about having a little bit more detail so that people understood what comments were made, fleshing out. I don't know how difficult that would be to do or not. I've had experience in another setting of having action minutes like this, and the action minutes then could link to the place in the videos where different actions or speakers and different agenda items, so that one could see in the agenda, in the minutes, and then you could go actually to see what it is. And I don't know if that is sufficient to address the concerns, or whether there's a desire to have more, actual comments, written comments in the minutes. But I think it's certainly worth considering doing something more than just the action without any way. Because watching through the whole video, to find where comments were made is too difficult. So if at least it's linked to the specific time in the video would be helpful. But I don't know how the commissioners feel.
Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as to the minutes, I can understand the aspect of not paraphrasing and using syntax and not really getting the full meaning. So I can understand that maybe the YouTube references would be a good point to put in, but also we get documents, emails before our meetings, and they're not included in the minutes. And I think that correspondence should be included in our minutes that we have.
Sure, go ahead,
Thank you.
Rebecca.
Sorry, but are these minutes here in, on paper? Because I don't have a copy of them.
Yes.
They were at our place here, right below the agenda. I think they were sent to us in I received them as an email with the link to the agenda, and the minutes were also in that same email.
Okay, then I missed that, and I don't have a printer, so is there a way I can get a hard copy now?
They're available online, but we could definitely see if we can get someone from staff to print them. But they're accessible via the site, right, available now.
So I have a question. For other commissions, like farm workers or LGBTQ, who does the minutes?
So the county is moving to sort of this action minutes method. So typically it's staff that is producing the minutes, but as we kind of went over initially, there's 40 plus commissions in the county, and it takes staff typically more than an hour or so. They do the hard work, the staff that are here to produce the minutes for each of those. So to sort of be consistent with how the Board of Supervisors operates and to establish consistency amongst the commissions, the bulk of the commissions are moving to the action type minutes. We were, because we saw this back and forth, and we were brainstorming a little bit about how we could perhaps add a little more context to those, so that you didn't have to go to the meeting, and we're free to receive feedback from you all on what would be the most helpful, whether it be report back items requested or things like that. Another option is, and I think Emma mentioned it, is we can establish a secretary who can also track some of those items that are of particular importance, who could meet with staff afterwards and say, we think that this is important to include in the minutes. And we could do some sort of addition thereby without sort of overburdening staff.
Okay. So that action isn't on our agenda today, but I don't know if someone is willing. Can we talk about having a secretary now, or we're good? Okay. Does anyone on the current body want to act as that secretary to track things that we want to make sure are included in the minutes?
Are you, go ahead, Shirley. So are you asking to redo all of these minutes?
No, I'm asking, moving forward, if there's something that we feel should definitely be included in the minutes. Do we want to have someone in this body to act as a secretary to note the things that we feel are important to include in the minutes? Is that, am I, yes, okay.
So there would be a staff person who's taking the minutes, and then there's somebody on this board that would be on the commission that would be reviewing it and approving it?
No. So during the meeting, someone on the commission will note important items that were shared with us, and then give that to staff to make sure that those items are included in the minutes. That's the ask.
Check.
Yes, please.
I think, I think it's more of a staff function than it is a commission function in order to prepare those notes. And secondly, I think the correspondence that we get, like before this meeting, we had an email, that it be attached, and I'd like to settle that before we go any further. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry.
Hold on one sec.
Yeah.
So I think there's two different things. So I think first we'll deal with the minutes. Yeah, and then we'll go to attaching things to the minutes. So there's no one that wants to volunteer to do the ask from staff. No. Okay. Because it seems to me that the county is moving forward. All commissions are moving towards having their minutes look like our minutes. So from what I'm hearing, staff is going to continue to do it this way. Yeah, well, hold on one second. I'll get to you, Shirley. Your hand is up. But you don't have a mic. Do you want to just come up to the podium? Yeah, no worries. No, it's okay.
With all the technology we have now, wouldn't there be a way to have a way for the audio to be recorded into text form, and then the portion of the text that are needed are, you know, highlighted and then posted in as needed, so that way it doesn't really require a secretary per se, but it does require someone who is, even with AI now, it even records all the text and can do it the way you want it to be. So that may be an option of, rather than trying to get someone to do it on their own time, is to just reach out to the AI part of it and have it just grab its voice to text, and then you have everything you need.
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons of ways to do this more efficiently. It's just, are we going to have, for me, I'm trying to wade through our ask, and they're trying to standardize something for everything. And if we ask them to do something, are you going to be able to do it just for us? And then I'm going to go to Shirley, and then I'm going to go to our youth commission. So do you want to answer that now, or do you want to just wait and hear from everybody and then?
Yeah, I'll wait to hear. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Go ahead, Shirley, and then I'll go to Bethany.
So there we go. I also looked at the minutes from Los Angeles, their oversight commission, and they're very good because you know what's taken place in the meeting. And I think that if we want to be transparent, we've got to begin by having our committee transparent. And so, you know, and Adam and I did talk about AI, using AI, because I think that is a good idea, so that people don't have to work really hard, but we'll have, at least we know what we've done. Because, I mean, if you look at these minutes, we've wasted 3 months. That's what it seems to say.
Bethany?
I'd like to suggest using an AI transcriber like otter.ai, especially because it compiles a complete transcription of what things were said and when they were said. And it's also capable of generating things like action items, what was promised during the minutes, and also a summary of what took place and what happened. But I do want to caution that it's not a perfect technology. Sometimes I think people will have to go back to the transcription and to the summary, because sometimes the AI doesn't transcribe things correctly, or it just makes a complete error. But I do think that using AI has very valuable potential, but we do need to approach it with caution as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead, Rob.
As to certifying, we will certify by a vote of that the minutes are acceptable or being able to be passed. But who, as to, you know, talking concerning the AI, you know, that could open a Pandora's box for us big time. So I would be against that.
So for me, I mean, on the whole Elmo and everybody, let's move on. I would just rather just have some sort of transcribed minute so we don't get hung up on this particular issue, and we could move on to what we're actually here to do, which is more work related things. So if there's a way that we can have more detail in our minutes, whether we use AI, and then if we do vote, if the body does vote to use AI, then it is our responsibility to read the transcription to ensure that it's correct. I mean, that's part of our job. So I'm not opposed to using AI. I think it's nice to have, we'll have the visual. If someone wants to watch the whole meeting, they can do that. And then it's transcribed somewhere, so there's a more detailed meeting minutes and notes, so people will know what was said, what action items were taken. And then if this is still on there too, so you can have the full AI transcription, and then if somebody just wants the cliff notes, they can still look at the other minutes that is still are there.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, and something we can take a look at before the next meeting.
Okay.
We can come back with some ideas on a happy medium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not more staff time, because it is just plugging. You can plug the video into the AI, and it goes through everything and transcribes it for you. Rebecca?
Madam Chair, I don't think AI can actually do a summary and what action items are unless you tell it to do that. And I know it's labor, but we're doing work here, and I'm in favor of having someone write out what the agenda is, what the discussion summary was, what the action items were, what the resolutions are. Being on another commission, this is what we had, and it was after we approved the minutes, we could see this is what we said we would do, this is where we're going. And I realize this is taking a lot of time right now, but it's also that this really isn't showing anything. And I realize now why I missed it is because I didn't realize these were minutes.
So we'll, like I say, we'll take this all into consideration and see if we can come back with something that's
Yeah.
happy medium.
Can I also get some clarification? Like, do we have the power to tell you to do different minutes for us? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Then that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm like, I think we're spinning our wheels and doing a lot of things for something that we have the power to say we want these type of minutes, or if the minutes are being standardized across all the commissions, are we supposed to just accept?
I think there's room for feedback on this process.
Okay.
But
With feedback, like, is that a yes or no?
in terms of direction,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to give specific direction, but
We would not be
it's
able to
like
give.
We're definitely going to take in the feedback and.
But we don't. But it's
see-
not. So I'm just trying to get clarification
Yeah.
from my board role to hear.
Yeah.
We can't give direction like this is how we would like it moving forward. It's more you're taking under consideration.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
who is making the decision? You're taking it under consideration, and who's making the decision?
I think through the county executive's office and allocation of resources and whatnot, we'll ultimately be standardizing the processes and how resources will be used. But like I say, this is something that the county is moving towards, but has not fully implemented across all our boards. And so I'm suspecting that this will be a similar conversation in other boards, and we may arrive at some sort of medium that makes sure that we're meeting the goals of the commissions
So when
plus
does the
the county.
decision get made? When all of this consideration is done, when does the decision get made?
I think between now and the next meeting, we should be able to come back with some ideas on how we can sort of meet your goals while also ensuring that we're not overtaxing staff who are administering the commissions.
Yeah. So I think, and then I'll pass it over to you. There is a way that we can get the minutes we want. We could do them ourselves. So we could do them ourselves. That's what we have control over. I'm all about doing the things that I can have control over. We do not have control over the staff. So I'll turn it over.
I'd be willing to see a sampling AI and
Yeah.
see what it can produce and see the accuracy. Past that I've had, it's been kind of touch and go. It depends on the software program. So I'd like to see a sample of it, and then we could see how well it works or how well it doesn't work.
Cool.
Okay.
Do we need to vote on any of this? Or is it okay to just you're just taking in the feedback?
Yeah,
that's good.
feedback's fine
Okay.
for now.
All right. And so with the approval of minutes, do we want to postpone the approval of these minutes until and just run these through AI, and then that could be the sampling that we look at?
I would move that we continue the minutes to a future meeting after we hear back from staff on how they might be updated or in a format that maybe works better for us and for staff.
Perfect.
Okay. Is there a way, but I want to know, is there a way to run these minutes through AI, and that's how we can see what the sampling looks like?
Yeah, and we can answer that question
Okay.
by the time of the next meeting, if not before, in our debriefs before the next meeting and agenda setting.
Okay.
Just so I'm clear, what will we be running through? We're not going to run old minutes because there's nothing there.
No, they do the video.
Okay.
And then would
So
create.
this video.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the video of the August, because we have the video of August
Okay.
24th. So then we could run those through and bring those back and see if those are sufficient minutes for us.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what that means is that we get a transcript, not really minutes, we get a transcript.
Don't know.
Yeah, I think there's ways to program the AI so that it's not just a transcript. It's more, yeah.
With
So,
the caveat that it
yeah.
may miss
Something.
some of your direct questions, key topics. And so I do want to caution that is that it will take in, because right now through YouTube, through what we have available, there's a full transcription available by closed caption. That is currently available. Also, there's a timestamp under each agenda item, so you can easily go to that. And so I think the assistance that would be helpful is really documenting those key topics or key follow-ups that would be important to the commission, and then that could be included. But we'll definitely, like Adam said, is take a test and bring it back and have something for you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Shirley.
I didn't want to make this complicated.
It's okay.
I just, for example, when we canceled the meeting of October 6th or whatever it was, that's not in the minutes. That's the sort of thing that needs to be in the minutes. It's those simple acts that are very important that need to be documented.
Yes. And I think for those type of things, we can amend the minutes to add those items to them as well, if we miss anything moving forward. But I understand what you're saying. Okay. Yes. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I am willing to do the minutes from the 9/18 meeting, just so that we can compare whatever that AI is to what I have, because just even what's written here, and I'm looking over my notes and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we had a whole thing on correctional health and all the questions that came up about it, and there's nothing here. And even if it was just what are the questions that we're asking and what were some of the answers that we were told, I don't know, but we'll get back to you. So I'm willing to do that. I don't want to take it on myself just to show it to you, but I don't know, should I ask for approval of doing that or what? But I'm willing to do that.
I don't think you need it. If you want to take it on, you can take it on and bring it back, and we can take a look at
And
it
so
and
when do
compare
I
it.
send it to who and when?
You could send it to Bill and myself anytime you want to,
Okay.
and then we'll have it for the meeting that we have, and then we can compare it. And then I'm also just going to outside of this look at AI and what AI a minute taker can do and what it'll look like. So we'll find something. Okay. Anything else? No? Thank you so much. And then, so the other comment or the other question that we had was attachment of key documents.
Correspondence that, like today, we had an email.
Yeah, so is there a way to attach documents that come into a link in the minutes or on?
Yes, we can attach the PowerPoint presentations, and currently they're attached by the item on the website. So if it's related to item 4, item 3, or whatever the items are, there's a link, but we can do better at making that linkage. Are you asking to attach it to each item in the minutes?
I think
Or
you were
make a link.
specifically, you also wanted to reference the
May I
public
continue?
comment.
Yeah. What we have done in another government board is that there's a section that says correspondence, and it's at the end of the actual agenda of the minutes for that particular meeting. So that's the way we have handled it. And then, of course, put it on the website as an attachment under correspondence, and it's usually at the end of the minutes of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Okay, one more call just in case before we move on. Okay, cool. Thank you, everybody. All right, so now we're going to move on to item number 5. Ooh.
Approving.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a motion to move this item so we can continue to discuss at a future board meeting. So that was the motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And was there a public comment?
Do we approve the minutes?
No, we didn't approve the minutes. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And there's no hand raised?
There's no hand raised.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, guys.
We do have one hand
Okay.
raised.
No worries.
Just one moment. Okay. We have a hand raised by Noble Truth Seeker. Please begin speaking when you're ready.
Hi, I just wanted to add that it doesn't sound like anybody on staff is super familiar with AI, and sounded like your youth commissioner is familiar, and maybe you guys can find a site. There's probably a site that lists the 10 best AI note takers, and maybe if possible get trial copies of those apps and run it through at least 2 or 3 of them so you get a few to compare, so you can kind of save time and figure out which of the 3 you get back is the one you like the most, and then you can use that one. That's just a suggestion. Does that make sense? Uh-oh.
Yes, we heard you. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our presentation on out-of-custody programs and services. And I believe, first off, we have the Sheriff's Office to talk about patrol operations.
All right, we're on. Good evening. Okay, here we go. So on behalf of Sheriff Christina Corpus, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you tonight about patrol operations, to kind of give you a little glimpse, have a certain period of time, and I can answer some questions for you either here or later on, because it's kind of a big issue to talk about. But going into patrol operations again, on behalf of the Sheriff, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'll give you the thumbs up. I think it's important before we get into the patrol operations to really talk about the mission of the Sheriff, because what happens with the mission of the Sheriff, it kind of leads the direction of the operations as well as the Sheriff's Office. And the times that we're in now, I think it's very important to take this mission statement and start to look to the next chapter and control the narrative in San Mateo County where the Sheriff's vision is bringing our organization. So I will read this verbatim because I think it's important. I tried to memorize it, but I didn't want to wing it tonight for you guys. So, as stewards of our community, we envision a world where all humanity is valued and respected. We recognize our roles as leaders in this effort and commit to seeking creative and effective ways to work with and listen to the needs of our residents, businesses, and stakeholders. We do this with the passion to preserve safety for all who live, visit, or work in San Mateo County. And that's really, really important as we transition to the next slide. So the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office is dedicated to protecting the lives and property and is committed to providing the highest level of professional law enforcement and correctional services. We pledge to promote public trust through fair and impartial policing, and we treat all persons with dignity, compassion, and respect. Coming off the slide for a minute, it reminds me of, as a leader in this organization, I kind of came through the ranks and started from the bottom. It's really important that we all recognize service. Right? Why did we get into this job and who we do this job for? And I think we forget that at times. And as leaders in this organization, it's our duty to remind people, especially for people in the service business in which we all are, even everybody here on the board, is to really take that. And I transitioned to the philosophy of the Sheriff's Office, and it's one of the things that we've all really kind of got behind, the philosophy of beyond the call. And I think you people on the board here, some members of the community, I see them shaking their heads. They've heard that philosophy before, and I want to give you a little context of what that is and how it correlates to the Sheriff's mission. Beyond the Call speaks directly to our commitment to doing more for our communities than just responding to routine calls for service. Throughout this philosophy, Sheriff Corpus encourages our deputies to seek every interaction and call for service as an opportunity to understand and work to address the root of the underlying issue at hand. Whether it's taking time to go the extra mile or connecting residents or organizations who can assist, we aim to build trust with our communities by going above and beyond. And I think this applies to everybody, not only in the Sheriff's Office, but throughout San Mateo County, as well as whatever type of industry you're in. Currently, just go above. It's that extra couple minutes you spend with somebody, that extra impact that you have with them. It's really, really important, and it's kind of the messaging that we've been doing from the bottom up and the top down. Is really just going that extra minute to give some person your time, because a lot of people just want to be heard. So this all is going to correlate into the operations of the patrol divisions and how the Sheriff's vision is really translated into some really great things going on inside the Sheriff's Office. can't move forward unless we talk about the executive team. So again, Sheriff Christina Corpus is our sheriff. We have the undersheriff, Dan Perea, who's sitting behind me. We have the Chief of Staff, Victor Ienge, Dr. Victor Ienge, the Chief of Staff, and I am the acting Assistant Sheriff with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. So as we talk about patrol bureaus, a lot of people, when they talk about the Sheriff's Office, they don't realize the impact and the depth of the Sheriff's Office. So there are 5 patrol bureaus in San Mateo County, and I'm going to just identify them by name now, and I'll get into some of the specifics of each bureau to kind of give you some context of what each patrol bureau does. So there's Headquarters Patrol Bureau, the Coast Side Patrol Bureau, the San Carlos Police Bureau, the Millbrae Police Bureau, as well as the Transit Patrol Bureau. And now I'm going to go in depth a little bit with each one of these to give you an idea of their span and control. So the Headquarters Patrol Bureau is located here at 330 Bradford Street, and Captain Frank Dalporta oversees the Headquarters Patrol Bureau. The Headquarters Patrol Bureau is committed to improving the quality of life in North Fair Oaks, the town of Portola Valley, and the town of Woodside by delivering professional law enforcement services. They focus on prevention, education, and community policing, and they prioritize community service. One of the big things about Headquarters Patrol, in which I supervised previously, is that all unincorporated Redwood City, including North Fair Oaks, Emerald, Lake Hills, Sequoia Track, West Menlo, Belmont, and all of the little pockets here in Redwood City is overseen by Headquarters Patrol. And one of the unique aspects of Headquarters Patrol is that the town of Portola Valley contracts with the Sheriff's Office for police services, as well as the town of Woodside. So those are 2 contract cities built into the span of control of the Headquarters Patrol. There are 4 sergeants assigned to Headquarters Patrol, as well as 28 deputies and 2 motor units. There are also some CSOs and a lot of professional staff that help with Headquarters Patrol. It's one of the biggest bureaus in the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. Moving on to San Carlos Police Bureau. As everybody knows, it used to be the city of San Carlos had their own police department. The San Carlos Patrol Bureau is overseen by Captain Mark Myers. He is actually a bureau chief of San Carlos. And the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office takes pride in providing all law enforcement services for the city of San Carlos. Again, ensuring public safety and so forth. And we'll get into some of the supplemental things that the Sheriff's Office does for the city of San Carlos. They have 4 sergeants assigned to that bureau, as well as 12 deputies, as well as 2 motors, some CSOs, and some professional staff. This brings us on to the Millbrae Police Bureau, and Bureau Chief Captain Eamon Allen oversees all police services in Millbrae. They have 4 sergeants assigned, 18 deputies assigned, as well as 1 motor. With the city of Millbrae and San Carlos, they're both contract cities, and that brings us to the Coastside Patrol Bureau in the next slide. The Coastside Patrol Bureau is another big bureau on the coast. It has 4 sergeants assigned, and Captain Richard Chichoff is now assigned as the Bureau Chief of Half Moon Bay, which also is a contract city with the services of San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. With the 26 deputies assigned, they have CSOs as well as professional staff out on the coast for all operations down to the Santa Cruz County border. Next. Lastly, we have the Transit Police Bureau, and Lieutenant Ben Hand oversees managing that bureau. And give you guys a little bit of context, the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office Transit Bureau offers law enforcement for all SamTrans and Caltrans across San Francisco, San Mateo, as well as Santa Clara counties. They investigate crimes, collisions, and accidents involving transit services and provide additional security for special events and projects. This bureau, again, spans 3 counties, so you can imagine the amount of span and control they have going into different jurisdictions, the laws with different counties, as well as maintaining the safety of the transit line through San Mateo County. So that's another really big bureau. Next slide. So this is probably one of the most important slides, and this is really what I want to emphasize. When you have the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office Patrol Division, you also have a lot of supplemental things that help out each one of these patrol bureaus. And Sheriff Christina Corpus, when she came into office, she really wanted to make sure that all the resources available to the Sheriff's Office was allocated throughout the county. So I'll touch briefly upon this because of time, but I'll go first with the Community Engagement Unit. That is a separate unit that falls under Headquarters Patrol. This is where you have SROs, you have some of the therapy canines you've seen on the internet, and everything community related. It's a resource for every one of these patrol bureaus to tap into. So if anyone's going to the Pumpkin Festival this weekend, or you've gone to the San Carlos festivals, events in North Fair Oaks, everything in San Mateo County taps in the community engagement unit. And Sheriff Corpus really wanted to make sure that this unit was accessible to all the patrol bureaus inside San Mateo County. And it's one of our bigger supplemental units inside of the office. We also have the PERT team, which is the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team. And to give you a little context of what this is, it's when we go out to situations that involve people suffering from mental illness or some type of mental health crisis. It's a way for the sheriff's office to really follow up with that family and give them the resources needed. And it's really that long-term solution to kind of do beyond the call. It really brings us back to beyond the call. So that's something that's really, really important to the sheriff, and that's something that's available to all the members in all of these police bureaus. The Emergency Services Bureau is also a separate unit that handles all type of natural disasters, search and rescue. Recently, former President Trump came to visit the town of Woodside, and they would coordinate all of that type of response. So anything that is on kind of a bigger level, countywide, that could affect all aspects of San Mateo County leadership, the ESB Bureau will take that over. Still on? Okay. And then we have the Homeland Security Division, which talks about SWAT, TCAT, crisis negotiation, and that is kind of a supplemental thing as well, and there's a lot of things that go into that, and one of our speakers will talk to some about that after I do. We have the San Mateo County Gang Task Force, which is a county-wide task force that basically supplements every city in San Mateo County, and more specifically some of the police bureaus that we oversee, and the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office runs that and facilitates all the response related to gang activity in San Mateo County. We also have a detective bureau, and under Sheriff Corpus's vision, she really wanted a detective who specialized in all of these bureaus, so we have specifically assigned detectives who handle all cases out of each one of these bureaus. And the big thing about that is they're all well-versed and work collaboratively with the other cities, but they also have a sense of service to those communities because they have a vested interest because they're assigned to those patrol bureaus. Lastly, the Vehicle Theft Task Force is also a county-run system where they go out and they identify trends from Alameda County, San Francisco, and they really work on curbing the vehicle thefts coming into San Mateo County as well as leaving San Mateo County. So this gives you kind of a glimpse when you have contract cities, Half Moon Bay, Millbrae, they get the full weight of the sheriff's office and the sheriff's vision to really give them the resources that they weren't necessarily getting when they acted alone as just a straight municipality. So this brings us to recruitment, and I think that's a big topic for a lot of people, and we wanted to really kind of give you a glimpse of where we're at with really going back to the mission statement, because it's really important to have people that look and live in the areas in which they police. And so one of the focuses during hiring is to make sure that we increase some of the people so we can kind of build that trust and kind of close that bridge between some of the community members. And it kind of gives you a glimpse. I won't go too much into it, but you can see some of the numbers. I don't have a comparison model, but I can represent to you that the numbers have increased. And under Sheriff Corpus's leadership, the amount of vacancies in our organization has dropped tremendously because of the hiring and the recruitment to make sure that the people that patrol these police bureaus represent people in the community. This brings us to the crime stats. And this is really, really important, especially in the patrol bureaus. As you can see, this is the most updated crime statistical data. And I know this board's really big on data, looking at the numbers and really kind of putting those into context. The San Mateo County Sheriff's Office has a really intentional way in which we police. And we use the data and the technology, and we really wanted to again, be intentional in the way in which we direct our resources. And I think when we go beyond the call, it directly reflects, and we're starting to see the results of that beyond the call with the numbers. And you can look at some of the things that the normal person would, see on the street, like simple assaults are down, breaking burglaries are down, larceny and theft offenses are down, because it's really that beyond the call mentality that the deputies have inside of these patrol bureaus when they go that extra step to make sure that we can find the root causes and put the resources in place to make sure the stats do in fact come down. So that's a really, really good representation if you had a question to yourself about the narrative, whether or not, policing's up, policing's down. This is the stats. This is them directly off the website, and we have a representative that's going to talk to you a little bit about how this comes about and so forth. But this is a really good thing to look at, because it just goes to show you that the operations and the direction that the sheriff has placed the patrol bureaus in has a direct correlation with the amount of crime going down in this county. And that concludes my presentation, and I might have a couple minutes. I'll take the direction from the board if you have any questions.
Opening up to anyone that have any questions? Sure, go ahead, Rob, and then I'll go to you. After next, Alexis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You had the chart up there where you broke down at people of different ethnics. And I know the sheriff has a pretty much innovative boot camp program for women.
Yes, sir.
And those stats weren't up there, and I'd be interested to find out the success of that program, recruiting women as law enforcement officers, because being part of the fire service, we have the same issue, trying to recruit women for these different types of positions. And I know she has an innovative program that I've tried to get my fire agency involved with.
Yeah, so if I can,
It hasn't worked too well.
Yeah,
Thank
so if
you.
I can comment a little bit on the boot camp. This was something that Sheriff Christina Corpus started before she was the sheriff. And it was a way to bring people in and kind of let them know, like, hey, we're just like you, And so the women's boot camp, if you're not familiar with it, it's actually kind of a model for a lot of agencies, especially fire. They're trying to model that after recruitment. So what she does is she puts together this program where young women can come, where there's a lot of women deputies, a lot of women in leadership that go there, and some of the barriers that they may face, I don't know what they are. I can only talk about them. But as a recruiting tool for the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, I can tell you from the last boot camp, I think there was 8 or 9 going through the process at this point because they realize that they can do it, because they never thought they could before or whatever barriers were in place. But this boot camp is a really, really good bridge for a lot of the people, and that's why you see those numbers reflect the recruitment that the sheriff's really doing.
So it's pretty successful then.
It's very successful. That's why we try to do it, I think, at least 3 times a year. And there's a lot of feedback, and there's other people in this room that probably have family members that have gone through it. And all the feedback we get is we try to make it personal because, again, this isn't a job. This is a profession, and it's really beyond the call. So the people that are going up there go up there for a reason, and they connect with these individuals, and they give them their personal cell phone numbers, and they understand the struggles, and they say, hey, I was just like you. We have a lot of people that never thought this could be a career for them, and this opportunity has really opened up their eyes, and which is reflective in the hiring that the sheriff's been able to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you, Alexis?
I'm good, thank you. I wanted to ask about the PERT program. Was that created recently? Is that something new, or?
No, it's been around for a while, and the sheriff kind of revamped it to really make sure we hone in on what their specialty is. So, the training that the deputies get that are assigned to that is above and beyond what normal deputies do. And we also have another program through, the Board of Supervisors with the co-response clinician that's operating in North Fair Oaks right now, and they go along with officers when they have somebody having a mental health crisis, and it's a clinician hired through Star Vista through the behavioral health of San Mateo County. So we're really trying to think outside the box to address some of this stuff, and PERT is a really, really good resource in some of the success stories with the follow-up with the parents who kind of at the end, they don't know what to do, and I think everybody's been touched by mental health in some aspects, so it's a really good program that the sheriff has really invested in.
So was it during 2018, was it in place?
I don't know the answer of when it was in place, but it's been in place for a while.
Okay. So, but a while, does that mean like 5 years, or? I mean, I was just curious about 2018.
I don't know, but I could find out for you.
You could find out? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can we go back to the others? So is this countywide? Or is this just in the
This
areas?
is just for San Mateo County Patrol. This doesn't have to do with like Belmont or anything else. It's just our statistics.
Just the areas where you patrol?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. And then, and so you were saying Like what programs do you attribute to the lowering of some of these?
So a lot of this stuff, when you look at, let's just say breaking and entering, larceny, stolen property, a lot of that is kind of the education arm of the sheriff's office and really educating the patrol bureaus to push out that information not only to the schools, but also at the town halls that the sheriff corpus has implemented. We just had one last night in the city of the city of Millbrae. It's really information and really getting out to the deputies if they see an area, and that intentional enforcement is really if you see an area that's starting to have problems, talk to the stakeholders in that community, educate them on locking their vehicles. If it's business owners, hey, make sure your lights are on at night. These are some things to safeguard. And so that beyond the call of just answering calls for service. And again, I have a pretty good lens at this because I came from the city of Daly City prior, so I understand different responses. And so when you talk about the stats going down, it's really just getting that awareness out and letting people know, like, hey, this is happening, like, you know, elderly scams on the internet and that kind of stuff. As long as we start to educate people, we start to see people make better decisions, more informed decisions, and we think it has a direct correlation with the statistics.
So this is the statistics on crime going down. Is there any data on what happens when you're on patrol, who stopped, the race and ethnicity of who stopped, how many stops?
Yeah, well, there's RIPA. It's a reporting statistics that we have to do on every traffic stop.
Yeah, are we going to get any of that here?
So
go ahead.
So that actually comes out from the state. We report to the state, and I don't know when their first report's coming out because we just started doing that, and I don't know if you have more information on that.
It may be that our next presenter is going to cover that in the data presentation because that is part of the sheriff's data portal.
Okay, but you don't have it. You don't know it at all.
No, so we take the information. It's automatically digital. It's automatically uploaded to the DOJ, Department of Justice, and then they compile that information and they put out their annual reports.
Okay, and so just in part of that educational training, like the same way you're doing this, I mean, do you take that data and also talk
to RIPA data? Yeah, absolutely. And then it can affect policy. It can affect the way in which we do things. RIPA is a really new reporting service, you know, but we also have internal mechanisms in place too that we try to flag stuff if issues come up as well.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Rebecca.
So I really do care about mission statements, and so when I looked at that, it sounded good, but it was a little bit vague for me, and I tried to. One of the terms was go the extra mile. And I'm wondering, like, what do you mean by that? And what is going beyond? What is it that you're doing that's extra that you think is making an impact?
Yeah, so I think it's very subjective, right? It's like art, right?
Yeah.
When you look at art and you take what you take from it, somebody else doesn't. So the extra mile kind of correlates to beyond the call. And it's a philosophy. It's a way in which you start to do policing. And so, you know, it brings me to a time, and I can tell you why it resonates with me, and when I push it down to other people. When I was a 24-year-old police officer, I went to a house, and I'll make this very quick. It's a really nice story, but I remember it. I remember going to a house. I was 24 years old, and I went into the home, and there was two Asian parents, and they had an Asian daughter who was 13 years old, and she was in her room, and they did not know what to do. And here I am, fresh out of college. What do I know, right? So I took a second, I went back in the room, and I talked to this young girl, and as I talked to her, and it makes me emotional when I talk about it, but I talked to her, and all she wanted to do was go down to Ceremony Mall with her friends after school. But culturally, she had to do her grades, she had to do certain things, and there was a lot of discipline in that family. And I got done talking to her, and I talked to her for about 35 minutes that I did not have, right? And I didn't have children. I went back to the parents, and I said, look, you're at a critical point in your life with this child. I said, I'm 24 years old, and your child is either going to go one way or another way, the way in which you react at this point. I said, you got to give her a little bit of leash. I said, I understand culturally we're a little bit different, and the demands are a little bit different. I said, but you can't lose your daughter. I said, I'm going to tell you right now, she's going to make you proud. And now I'm going to fast forward 7 years. I'm sitting in Starbucks at Ceremony Shopping Center, and I'm sitting there with one of the sergeants. I'm a sergeant at this point, and this girl comes in, and she walks by me. She says, hey, are you Officer Fox? And I was a sergeant, but I wasn't going to correct her. I said, yeah, I am. And she says, do you remember me? And at that moment, I don't remember names, but I said, and she said, do you remember me? And I go, I don't. She said, you came to my house, and I stopped her. I said, you live at 272 Manzanita. And she said, I do. And she said, I just want to let you know I made my parents proud. to this day I get choked up because there's not many memories that I have, but when we talk about going the extra mile or beyond the call, that's the message that we give the people that we're hiring in this organization, and we're changing the mindset. I hope that helps.
I have a question. Thank you so much for the presentation. Sergeant?
What's that?
Your title?
I'm just,
I-
you
I
can call
don't-
me
I
Matt.
don't- I don't want to
Yeah.
get it wrong. Question, there was a slide that talked about total applicant pool, 927. Curious when the time frame for all of those applicants came in? Is there something up there?
You know, it's hard to, I mean, I don't know the actual applicant pool. So you have a lot of people who apply who don't make it through the process.
Totally
So
understand.
it kind of gives you a glimpse of how many people applied, and obviously not 927 were hired.
Mhm.
I apologize, we don't have a comparison model maybe to like 2 years ago. I don't know if they tracked that data. I just wanted to kind of, this just really ties into kind of the sheriff's vision of making sure that the people that patrol these communities are representative of the communities.
Okay. Yeah, and I was just wondering, definitely see that was just of the applicant pool. Wondering if this is also for positions throughout the office or the department. It's not just a deputy. It's not.
Yeah,
just
it's throughout the San Mateo
CO.
County Sheriff's Office,
So it
professional
could
staff,
be
and
administrative and all
Yes,
that
sir.
type of stuff. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have the demographics, to build on your question, of the actual staff that's in the sheriff's department?
You mean individual departments and so forth?
Patrol.
Patrol, yeah. And not readily available, but obviously if you on the website is actually broken down for you, ma'am.
Okay, and I have another question, and that's on your actual staffing, the shifts and the hours, because I heard that in the jail people can work like 16-hour shifts.
Yeah.
So what is it on your patrol?
It's the same. It's pretty much kind of a statewide thing. 16 hours a day is the mandatory amount of hours you can work, so you can have 8 hours rest between shifts. And you know, we work 12-hour shifts. So if you work 12-hour shifts and you get a really complicated call, your 15th hour in, you might be here for another 4 hours writing reports, going to the hospital and so forth. But the sergeants are really on that to make sure, hey, come back tomorrow. But 16 is pretty much the maximum. Some people do it for commute times because they don't want to sit in traffic. They'll stay to help, but 16 hours is the maximum.
Go ahead, Bethany.
No, I think the demographics and kind of the culture of each bureau is a little bit different. You know, the coast is completely different than Redwood City and the concerns they have, but the policies and procedures and protocols, they're standardized throughout the office, and the application is pretty much standardized as well. Yes. Yeah, so we're mandated by POST, which is the Police Officer Standard of Training. It's a state thing that we have to follow, and then we have our own internal policies, and a lot of our policies exceed POST standards, and so that's pushed out to every one of the patrol bureaus. No problem.
Sure, go ahead, Rob.
I have a follow-up question from Bethany. Are there any like general orders, administrative orders, SOPs relative? You have 5 bureaus, and there are basically 5 different communities that you patrol. Is there like Lexipool?
Lexipool?
Yeah. We have been in the fire service and former law enforcement myself. Do you have anything like that as a reference for your organization?
Yeah, so
for the different divisions that you have.
Yes, we do have flexible policies. We have policies for everything from shaving your beard to your hair being cut to your shoes being polished, and we have policies for everything, and it's all in Lexipol, and Lexipol is pretty much the standard in law enforcement right now. And those are the ones that go and they get updated every time there's a case ruling or whatnot to automatically populate, and our deputies get alerts to make sure they go and acknowledge those policies.
Could I follow up? So let's say you have the coast. That's one of your areas of responsibility. And then you have Portola Valley. Is there any like specifics relative to patrol responsibilities for those particular areas that are different? And do you have them as part of Lexipol in your patrol division operating procedure or standard operating procedure?
Yeah, so Lexipol is standardized. It doesn't differentiate between Portola Valley, Millbrae, or San Carlos. Maybe the application, but policy is really just policy. So the application of policing is going to be different in Millbrae as it is in Portola Valley, just because the concerns and needs are different. So, but in relationship to just policy enforcement of the policy application, those are consistent throughout the bureaus.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Rebecca.
Yeah, so where can you find those demographics for the patrol operations on the website? Because I just looked and I didn't find anything, and I was moving around on there. And what you're talking about is like maybe 4 sergeants in one area, 26, 28 deputies.
Yeah,
So,
I gave you a brief overview. So the 4 sergeants, they work 12-hour shifts. So you have team 1 and team 2, which day watch, opposite days, graveyard, right? So you have 4 sergeants. You have 28 deputies, whether 5, depending on the contract cities, how many people they have in their contract to be on patrol. If San Carlos has 4, you'll have 4 deputies on each team, so that's 16, and 16 on nights. So,
Yeah, the
demographics
race
of
and
what it looks like.
the race and gender.
Yeah, it should be on the transparency portal, and maybe we can. It should be there. There's a lot of wealth information on that. PERT started in 2015. That was for Alexis. I got back to you.
That's fast service. Okay. Anything else? No? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. I appreciate you.
All right. Next. There you go. Next, we have a report out on our Northern California Regional Intelligence Center. Hello.
I'm Mike Senna. I'm the director of the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, and I have to go back a little bit in time to start out how we started. And back in 1997, Sheriff Don Horsley was met by, at the time, Senator Dianne Feinstein and U.S. Marshal Jim Molinari, talking about bringing additional resources into the region. And so that effort led to San Mateo County leading as the fiscal agent, fiduciary, and the group that coordinates resources with us extremely well, but also with all the executives that sit on the Northern California HIDA and Regional Intelligence Center Executive Board. Next slide, please. Part of our effort, and this is what was created after September 11th, thanks to the support of the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, was that little corner there in the San Francisco Bay Area. That little dot is the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, as well as our HIDE area. And our goal, as far as one of these 80 centers around the country, is improve information sharing to prevent major threats to communities throughout the United States and 3 U.S. territories. Next slide. Now, I want to get right into some of the threats we're dealing with. So swatting, for those that aren't familiar, it's an attempt by individuals or groups to divert law enforcement resources and direct those on victims. And those victims, initially it started out with telephone calls, faxes back when faxes were popular, and now it's gone to email and other means of disseminating those threats. The goal being, of course, to send someone to a victim's location, and sometimes in the hopes, unfortunately, that violence will occur, and unfortunately to those victims. And so over the last several years, we've had days where we've had up to 200 threats that have come through. And so that means 200 officers, patrol officers, are going and knocking on doors, being told that someone there is being held hostage, has a gun, bombs have been placed, or that someone is planning to go out and do a mass casualty attack. In fact, this county has received a number of those messages, and law enforcement officers have had to go to those addresses. In one case most recently that came to the county, it happened to be an individual that was a religious leader that they went to his house. And so we've seen a surge of this, especially since October of last year, along with a surge in activity among some of the groups that are classified as terrorist organizations to direct attacks and cause attacks to occur within the United States. And of course, the swatting is one tactic that's been used by some of these groups to just divert resources, unfortunately, as well as keep people on edge that belong to different faith-based groups, because a lot of these threats have been directed at faith-based organizations. So next slide. The other thing that we're looking at are threats to the election process, and elected officials. We've seen an increase of this beyond just the scope of attempted attacks on presidential candidates. We've seen threats towards elected officials as well as those that run elections. We've seen everything from telephonic threats to white powder, which in our region, one of the worst white powders we have is fentanyl, and I'll be talking about that in a second. But we have seen things that have been disrupting, as well as folks not only going after that physical threat of sending something to individuals' offices, but we've also seen cyber threats and cyber attacks and spear phishing exercises. We've seen foreign intelligence organizations, mainly from Russia, from China, from Iran, as well as to a lesser extent North Korea, folks that have been trying to infiltrate and get into both businesses and government systems throughout the country, mainly focusing on our local organizations and local county level. One of the goals that we have a statewide elections task force, and we also have a threat management group. And that threat management group is looking at individuals that may pose a threat or risk to folks. And over the last few years, we've had a number of incidents in folks that have stockpiled weapons, folks that have been planning attacks. We actually had one that an individual had stockpiled thousands of rounds of ammunition, almost 100 weapons, explosives, and was planning on attacking the Democrat offices in the state of California, as well as the governor's mansion. That threat was thankfully, thanks to reporting, we were able to have resources that stopped that from ever happening. So those are the types of things that we are dealing with right now within our region. And I want to go over to beyond that, those nation-state actors and our local violent extremists that we're dealing with. One of the things that's killing the most people in our region, next slide please, is the issues that we're having with fentanyl. And so fentanyl trafficking in our nation, and these are the National HIDTA program. There's 33 high-intensity drug trafficking areas in the country, which we are one of. Those stats from 2020, 2021, and 2022 show the seizure of fentanyl in kilograms. And these are task forces, about 23,000 full-time task force officers. In our region, we have about 290 task force officers. But in those 3 years, you see a surge from 4,316 kilograms in 2020 to 9,877 in 2021. And 2022, we have almost 14,000 kilograms. That's what's getting in the country. Micrograms will kill people. So next slide. It's the high-intensity drug trafficking area. So those 33 high-intensity drug trafficking areas across the country were designed with the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1988 to coordinate federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement resources so that people work together. Prior to that, we had a lot of people working in different directions, and it caused a lot of problems. So getting them all on the same page. In our region, in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023, we started out with 48 kilograms being seized by task forces to 2023, 305 kilograms being seized. Next slide, please. Now, these are the deaths statewide in California, deaths related to any opioid. This last reporting period was 7,560 deaths statewide. 6,850 of those deaths were attributed to fentanyl overdoses. So the majority. In fact, our task forces in the field are saying it's hard for folks to find heroin because everyone's selling fentanyl because it's so cheap, easy to move, and getting out there in the field, along with 22,000 emergency department visits. The number of prescriptions, which just as a reference, those are actually prescribed by doctors, 13,475,779 opioid prescriptions. When you look at the previous reporting period, 2022, we had just a few slight less deaths, 7,385 statewide, And those deaths related to fentanyl directly, 6,473. The prescriptions went down a couple 100,000, well, less than a couple 100,000 that were issued by medical prescribers. But you look at San Mateo County's deaths from this reporting period, 85 and 158 emergency department visits. Next slide. The majority of our narcotics here is coming actually nationwide. Currently is coming from two drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. One of those is CJNG. It's Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, and the other one is the Sinaloa Cartel. And in our area, the Sinaloa Cartel is the primary deliverer of narcotics to our region. Now, all of those drugs, the majority of them, are getting handed off to a Honduran group that has established itself in San Francisco for distribution. That group is operating in the Tenderloin area, a square mile area of operation, and that square mile of area, that is like the epicenter of narcotics, and that's where our drugs are coming from for the fentanyl distribution. Within that area, that in the city of San Francisco, it's 806 deaths last year. So it's an insane number of people dying from this, and it rolls out across our region. So we have in our area, at least within San Mateo County, an increase of 72% of reported based on our overdose mapping tool that I'll talk about in a little bit. You know, the suspected overdoses in our area in the previous reporting period in 2023 was 321 suspected overdoses. In this year's reporting period, so far, it's 554. So the great news is that we have naloxone that is out there that's helping bring people and sustain them and get them medical treatment. Next slide, please. But you know, these just off of a task force that we developed to focus on the Hondurans and their drug trafficking on the streets, over 147 kilograms was seized in this last year, almost $1 million in cash, 34 firearms. But we've identified 948 subjects that have been dealing within that small area in San Francisco that are selling the drugs that are ending up here in San Mateo County. We have 500 of those subjects that have been positively identified as part of the Honduran group that has now spread to Denver, Salt Lake City, Portland, and Seattle. And so they have a strong hold on the distribution that's coming directly from Sinaloa. Next slide. Part of what we're doing, and this is in cooperation with San Mateo County Public Safety Communications and other dispatch centers across the region, as well as the state's emergency management organization, is that we are, emergency medical services organization, we are bringing together real-time data on overdoses with the goal of getting alerts so that if we have a surge of overdoses, we can at least know that there's, you know, try to figure out why are we having surge in overdoses, try to reach out to communities, and we are doing collaboration with public health organizations throughout the region. Now, fentanyl itself is not, if you touch it, it's not going to kill you, but it's an inhalation hazard. It's a huge inhalation hazard, huge ingestion hazard. So, you know, we want to educate and train people, but my big fear is, as we see people put things in letters or other means, if somebody opens that and inadvertently gets that air in the air somehow, it can be inhaled. And naloxone will help out. But the problem we have right now is that we also are seeing, not as much here on the West Coast, we are seeing samples of it, but xylazine. And xylazine, which starts with an X, it's weird spelling, xylazine is actually an animal tranquilizer. And we are seeing xylazine mixed in with the fentanyl. The problem with xylazine is that there is no agent that counteracts it. So if you have xylazine overdose and fentanyl, there's a good possibility you're not going to make it. So no matter how much fentanyl you get or how much naloxone you give folks. So that's one of our big fears, is a surge in that, and there's also some other analogs that are being developed, which are even stronger. And so when we first started out seeing, fentanyl on the street, it would take 2 doses of naloxone to try to bring somebody back. But sometimes you see more. And now with carfentanil and other things, we haven't seen a whole lot of carfentanil out there, which is about 100 times worse. But we have these drugs that are out there that are a huge threat to the members of the community. So we're trying to get education out there. We're trying to identify the threats. We're trying to work the organizations as much as possible. And to do that, we've done joint collaboration between our district attorney's offices, our U.S. attorney's offices, and the assortment of federal, state, and local partners all working together. And so we are actually getting prosecution on a number of these folks that are dealing right now, including the U.S. Attorney's Office, which has done over 100 of these cases so far. Everyone in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District of California is taking a case, including the U.S. Attorney himself is prosecuting a case. So they're spreading out what they need to do to get this done. They've also indicted and extradited from Honduras four of the dealers there. Most of the money's going down to Honduras. Honduran dealers themselves have self-reported that they're sending or accumulating anywhere between $300,000 and $400,000 a year each, dealing these drugs in San Francisco, with the majority of the money going back to Mexico and Honduras. And we are seeing tens of millions of dollars that's being moved down there to support the effort of both the cartel and the Honduran community in which they're coming from the Sierra Valley. Next slide. Those are the big threats, the big topic issues. We really couldn't do this without the support of Sheriff Corpus and her leadership. She serves on our executive board along with the district attorney and the sheriffs and chiefs of police and federal agency heads from across the region that work with us. But those threats are continuing, and we are keeping an eye on those. Most recently, we also dealing with mass casualty events, which we are planning for. It's unfortunate, but we have seen more and more of those in the more recent times, including the violence in Half Moon Bay. But one piece is prevention. It's a threat management group, behavioral science trained folks that are from the FBI, Secret Service, U.S. Capitol Police, CHP, and other organizations that we are training. There's a threat management team in this county that we are working with, and our goal is to set up a threat management team in every county in the region that can stop these threats, identify these individuals that need extra help. Arrests are not the way to solve crime. It is diversion. It's getting people the help that they need, so that way they don't go out and do a mass casualty attack and disrupting that effort. So we are working dedicated on that. And then October 1st of this year, actually this month, we had a session where we brought in about 100 folks from across the region, including all of the bureau chiefs in San Mateo County and leadership, to work through a mass casualty event, work through the process, work on how we improve information sharing, how we prevent those threats. And our goal is to do those sessions throughout the region, but also additional one next year, and hopefully in this area, so that way we can get people trained up to prevent the threat. So I'm open to any questions, and my contact information is also there if you have any questions afterwards in the QR code.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I noticed that you didn't mention the airport. So is that part of where you also serve? Just
Absolutely.
thinking about that.
Threats to aviation, threats to the airport is a huge part of what we do. And there is we actually have two task forces that work the airport facilities. The first one actually works in the main area of the airport. The second one works and has worked with airmail at the airmail facility. That facility has gone away, but still the goal of that task force is to deal with anything going through air or freight. Initially, before we started seeing the movement of fentanyl across the border from Mexico, majority of it was coming from a little over 100 labs in China, and all those fentanyl labs were producing fentanyl for the United States, and the majority of that was going through San Francisco International Airport through the airmail facility. Within 6 months of us establishing a task force to focus on that effort, they started moving operations into Mexico, and the chemicals are coming from China and Southeast Asia into Mexico, and that's where they're producing ton quantities of fentanyl about every week. And so we have a large population of addicted folks in this country that are addicted to opioids, and fentanyl's probably the most potent thing they can get and the lowest cost. At the border, the pills that look like OxyContin pills, the cheapest price we had based on bulk was 35 cents per pill, which they sell up here for $20 a pill. So pure profit for them.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now moving on to behavior health and wellness programs. I'm turning it over to Dr. J. Africa.
Good evening, commissioners, and I'm just also mindful that my presentation is a bit long. I have about 25 minutes, and I noticed that you have another agenda, so I want to just point it out. I'll do my best to give you sort of an overview of what we do, but I can imagine that there will be lots of questions. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of ground setting about behavioral health and recovery services. Our department provides a continuum of services related to mental health and substance use also. So from prevention to early intervention to treatment to crisis and aftercare. We focus mostly on people who identify as people with severe or persistent mental illness. So these are folks that really their mental illness is a little bit more severe and need a little bit higher level of care. And then for young people, what we call severe emotional disturbance. And on the other side of that spectrum, we provide a variety or a range of services for people who have substance use disorders. We are considered the safety net services, meaning pretty much we're kind of the option of last resort. It sounds bad, but actually it's not, in my opinion. But we also serve people who are low income and uninsured. Our team, we are the second largest division within health with about 516 staff and a budget of about 340 million with over 40 programs. And I feel like it's growing every month. How we provide services is basically through 5 regional clinics in Daly City, San Mateo, Half Moon Bay, Redwood City, and East Palo Alto. But we also provide lots of services in the community and also in the field. That's really a good overview of how we do our work. And we cannot do our work without partners, community-based providers, sheriff's office, courts. And so really the success of our work really is dependent on the success of the partnerships. Our primary entry point is our access or call center, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. And so when you call that number, 1-800-686-0101, our staff really tries to screen whether you meet the criteria of what we call severe and persistent mental illness. Or if it's substance use, we will do our best to understand the level of care that you need and then link you to the appropriate resources. Now in behavioral health and recovery services, and you will see the complexity of services, our services are dependent on the funding source, compliance requirements, regulations, and so it's sort of really complex on how we try to braid all those sort of services together. So what we want to focus on tonight is really focused on the justice-involved population, because that was sort of the ask. But I will give you a bonus, so I'll talk also about our crisis work, because there's lots of things that are happening in our crisis work. And then also just talk a little bit about how we are supporting people who are justice involved in getting them housed, because I think that really is sort of a big issue that we're sort of seeing. Next slide. Just if there is one thing that you'll remember in behavioral health services, our services are provided 24/7, 365 days a year. If you are needing services in the mental health, this is the number that you call. For the alcohol and other drug services, you still can call the mental health. But anything that related to residential treatment, by state requirements, there has to be an approval process. So that's why there's a different number that you call when you are looking for residential treatment. So those are things that really are important. So next slide. So let me just again provide the overview. If you are walking into any of our clinics, these are the types of services that you can expect. So I'm talking about mental health right now, right? So many of our services, again, are provided in an outpatient setting. So care coordination, services related to psychotropic medication provided by psychiatrists or registered nurses, injections. We work in partnership with other providers to provide job or employment, educational services, and part of people's recovery. We do clinical case management, getting people really what they need to get linked to services. We provide group and individual psychotherapy. We have our staff. 45% of our services are provided by staff, and about 65% of our services are actually provided by partner agencies. So we have in-house therapists, clinicians, case managers, psychiatrists, addiction specialists to provide this level of services, and group and individual psychotherapy. But the one I also want to highlight really is the importance of people with lived experience. So what we call peer support. So in California, SB 803 was passed a few years ago, 2 years ago, I believe, really highlighting the importance of people who are either clients in behavioral health or family members of behavioral health to be part of our system of care, because on what they call the importance of people who have gone through the experience to help people navigate our complex systems. So SB 803 allowed us to be able to bill services that are provided by peers, but more importantly, elevated them by creating a certification process for people who are considered peers. So really, really important of the contributions of people with lived experience. Next slide. So I'll start with our mobile crisis response team, which is actually a new service. Last year, the Department of Healthcare Services required all counties to provide a 24/7, 365-day coverage for a mobile crisis response. So we had 6 months, literally, to actually ramp up this service. We didn't quite make it on time, but we were able to provide the full services as of August 31st, 2024. So it's 24/7 non-armed, I just emphasize this, non-armed mobile crisis to every county resident in San Mateo. Anywhere, anytime, to anyone, right? So when you call that number, which I will say in a little bit, there will be a person that will answer the phone and screen the kind and type of service that you need. And when that is not resolved in the phone call, there will be a mobile crisis that will be deployed to wherever the crisis is. So there's a dispatch, there's mobile crisis, there's a face-to-face crisis response, there's de-escalation, the ability to do a 5150 assessment, the ability to do a crisis planning or safety planning, to do a warm handoff when we need to transport you to an agency or a provider that can provide the services. And then more importantly, within a specified time, these individuals in our mobile crisis will do a follow-up visit to see whether there's under follow-up issues that need to happen. So this response is provided by 2 individuals, one behavioral health clinician partnered with a peer specialist, with somebody who has lived experience. So this new mobile crisis response is actually in partnership with 2 of our CBOs, Telecare, who is the crisis response, and then Star Vista, who answers the 988 and the hotline call. We can't do this successfully really without the partnership of our folks at the Public Safety Committee, which administers 911, our fire chiefs, our police chiefs, sheriff's office, also the emergency medical response services, which really deploys our ambulance. So I just wanted to just make sure. So I'll share the phone number later, but this is a new service that anyone who is in crisis, anyone, family members, neighbors, can call when they feel like somebody sort of needs a service. So brand new. Next slide. The other one that I wanted to make sure, just because of crisis, we also have a county-wide crisis response team. So when there are events in the community, for example, mass casualty events, natural disaster like the wildfire that happened a few years ago, there's a team of BHRS staff and volunteers that actually are deployed to provide some crisis response to that particular event, right? So we do psychological first aid, we triage people for services, and then really try to address the crisis right then, and then link them to appropriate responses. And again, this happened when there was sort of a shooting in Half Moon Bay. Our staff were really asked to respond. And these are volunteer staff that sort of are available 24/7. Next slide. So the one that I want to now start talking about as we sort of link towards the justice-involved population is our response to, in partnership with law enforcement. Now we know we are really doing our best to not have law enforcement respond because of wanting to ensure that they have the time and the resource to respond during public safety issues. And we also know that a less threatening, more responsive, hopefully friendly face that in response is actually much more helpful and really decreases casualties. And so there's two things that we are kind of doing in partnership right now. Is one, as Assistant Sheriff Fox said, is the Community Wellness and Crisis Response Team, or what we call CWCRT. So this response is a co-responder response with law enforcement, right? So there are municipalities that you already see there: Daly City, South San Francisco, San Mateo, Redwood City, East Palo Alto, Pacifica, San Bruno, and then a partnership with San Mateo and Foster City, Menlo Park, and then North Fair Oaks, that have a team of law enforcement partnered with a clinician responding to a particular crisis or a particular call. So that is a partnership that we have with our cities and also law enforcement. So what's available there, when you call and when they are deployed by or dispatched by 911, the team can respond through crisis assessment, de-escalation, again 5150, short-term follow-up, and resources and referrals. The other one, which again in partnership with our colleagues from 911, is instead of a police car responding to a crisis, you actually have a different kind of vehicle, like an SUV vehicle that responds when we need to transport an individual to, for example, an emergency room. You know, sometimes having sort of a police car or an ambulance can be shocking. And so there is what we call the SMART team. Literally, you can, through 911, can request that and saying, can you send the SMART car to actually respond to a crisis? So the service area is within San Mateo County. And again, as I said earlier, the folks that actually respond to that are more behavioral health or crisis trained paramedics, right? Again, really are trained to address behavioral health issues in a sort of a different way than, for example, law enforcement. So those are really important things that we want to share with you. And then the last one related to our partnership with law enforcement, next slide, is what, again, Mr. Fox said, is the PERT team. And as you heard, we started this partnership in 2015. It's a collaboration specifically with the Sheriff's Office. We have currently 2 teams where a Sheriff's Office and also a Sheriff's Detective, and a licensed clinician from behavioral health responds or follows up to a case or individual needing some behavioral health response. So again, one of the things that I want to emphasize here, it's really a follow-up. We tend not to be the first responders, but more of a follow-up in terms of the cases related to behavioral health. So referrals usually come from the sheriff and really respond within the sheriff's jurisdiction. So that was quite a lot, but I wanted to just make sure that you know that we really are trying very hard to be in the community and really meet people where they're at. We try to avoid just responding during crisis, but we know that things happen during crisis. All right, I'm going to move forward. So now, which is really your interest, is services related to our forensic mental health. So this is going to expand a little bit. So Ali, who's on vacation, is not here, so she really is the expert. She deserved the vacation, so I'm kind of doing this on her behalf, but I will do my best to try to respond to that. So there's a few programs in our forensic mental health: Service Connect, the umbrella called Pathways, and then our AOT, or Assisted Outpatient Treatment, and then this newest program is called the Care Court. And so I'm going to try very hard to explain that, like really just to give you an overview. The good thing about this is San Mateo actually provides a variety of services for justice-involved population, right? So that's the great thing. And I was telling Adam this earlier that if I was to do my normal presentation, we would be going over 99 slides. But because I wanted to make sure that you left on time, is that I literally condensed it to about 25 slides. But again, it's really very high level. So next slide, please. So let me talk to you about Service Connect. So Service Connect is a partnership with Human Services Agency and Probation. So these are providing, again, a variety of mental health services, including counseling, case management, peer support, support groups, engagement, job development, employment training, to people who are classified under the AB 109 realignment program. So these are post-release community supervision folks and those who are really needing mandatory supervision. So these are non-violent, non-serious, and non-sexual offenders that really are needing some services to assist them kind of go back in the community. So again, the referral comes from probation, the sheriff's office, and right now in question, parole. But we have received referrals from parole, but I think that's going to shift because of the funding. So next slide. So Pathways. So Pathways is in collaboration with the courts, probation, the district attorney, the sheriff's office, correctional health, NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and many of the programs actually started in 2006. So Pathways program released the umbrella structure of what we call field-based services. So these services are provided in the field, and mostly clients from specialty courts and mental health diversion programs. So there are 4 programs under the Pathways program. Again, a variety of services that I already talked about earlier. So let me talk about, next slide, Pathways Intensive Mental Health Diversion. So I'm sharing you'll notice criteria, referral, how long length of service is different, because again, it depends on compliance, funding, regulations, right? So for Pathways to be part of that program, you have to have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar, PTSD, and major depression. You have to have a felony charge, but not on supervised probation. But probation obviously needs, provides some support in that supervision. Again, I'm not going to read what kinds of services we provide. You can be in the program for about 2 years, and referral is usually done by the defendant's attorney or for eligibility. So again, there's a referral from the defendant's attorney. So that's one. The next part, or the next program, next slide, is our Pathways Mental Health Court. Again, I'm not going to read you all the services, but again, this is, you can actually go through court in the length of about probation to about 1 to 3 years. Anyone can refer a family member, an attorney, a law enforcement to be part of the mental health court. So usually you can, instead of going to jail or getting inside jail, that you can participate in a treatment program. So this is the mental health court. So next slide. Uh-oh, is that a sign? So there's 2 things: the Pathways Veteran Treatment Court. Again, the types of populations are people who are veterans. Again, program you can be in the program for about 1 to 3 years, and it's again really initiated by the public defender to see whether you're eligible. And then in the Military Diversion Court, it's pretty much the same thing, and people that you sort of were in the military. So that's again the Pathways program. Next slide. Assisted outpatient treatment actually started a few years in San Mateo. I think we were one of the counties that implemented what is known as Laura's Law. There's very specific criteria for people who are eligible for AOT. They have to have some severe mental illness, but they have not followed up with treatment. It's very, again, specific. This individual should have 2 or more psychiatric hospitalizations and or treatment in a correctional setting or facility within the last 3 months, or threatened or attempted to significant danger to themselves or other people within the last 48 months, right? So again, very, very specific criteria. So if you are participating in the AOT program, you are offered really high intensity, more intensive level of services, what we sort of call wraparound, so really intensive case management. Anybody can be referred to our AOT program. It's actually a low number in San Mateo that qualifies for the AOT program. Speeding through, Care Court, next slide. This is very new. We're really happy that Care Court was launched 6 months early than what the legislation is requiring, which is December 2024. So again, this is for people who have who are experiencing some level of schizophrenia or psychosis spectrum disorders. You're sort of noticing sort of a theme of psychosis. These are individuals, again, that have not been stabilized with voluntary program. This is a civil process, and so to be able to participate in the Care Court program or Care Court, the individual, a petition is sent through the court, right? So the petition to say that individual may qualify for Care Court, you will go through the petition through the court, and then the court will have sort of a hearing, and then we'll see whether you are sort of eligible to be part of the Care Court program. Unfortunately, the petitioners who can petition, or there's sort of all these criteria that people have to fulfill. Referral, unlike the other pathways, there's very specific criteria on who can make referral. So family members, director of a hospital, a community-based organization. So again, I'm just sharing you the complexity of all these things because I think it's just important that we have really a variety of menu for people depending on the level of care and their situation. So next slide. I want to just touch a little bit of housing. We are really lucky that this county is really investing on getting people who have behavioral health issues housed. So through Prop 63 money, we have been able to partner with the Department of Housing. So right now, for people who have behavioral health issues, we have 7 beds at the Navigation Center, 5 beds as a safe harbor. There's an ongoing case management support. And then through our partnership with Mental Health Association, we have 15 beds for people who have behavioral health issues. The other thing that's really important is we have dedicated housing, about over 70 permanent supporting housing units built with MHSA money, Mental Health Services Act money. So if you earn over $1 million, you've contributed to that. And so really within scattered sites, meaning that there are bigger housing projects that we have units there so that we can have people housed. Next slide. And I'm going to pause after this. I just wanted to share with you, these are the sites where we have units devoted to behavioral health clients in this county. Again, using MHSA dollars in partnerships with Department of Housing. So I'm going to pause for a minute and see, am I still okay? Because I'm looking at the time and wanted to just make sure how things are going.
It is what it is, Jay.
Okay,
yeah.
So
You gotta finish.
sort of gives you sort of the mental health side of things. Again, just telling you that we actually are offering quite a bit. So now I want to go to the substance use side of things. And so I told you earlier what kinds of services are available in the mental health side through our regional clinics and our field-based work. In substance use, really also an expanded degree or continuum of services. Care coordination, counseling, family therapy, medication services, peer services, prescribing for MAT, which I'll talk about later, and then also recovery services and recovery residence, which is housing. So that's, again, a real variety of services that we provide. Next slide. So just focusing on the justice-involved population, here are some of the examples of the programs that we offer in partnership with, again, many of our partners, courts, treatment providers. So I'm going to go through this quickly. Next slide. Diversion, right? So these are for folks that plead guilty to any drug-related charges. They are sort of court-ordered then to participate into a 32-hour substance use education program, group counseling or individual counseling. So once they complete the program, their probation will be what's the word? They'll end their probation if they complete that. So again, really, it's sort of a carrot, right, of providing these services so that instead of being in jail or and remaining in jail, that they actually have sort of opportunities to get these services. Next slide. So what we call diversion. And if you have under DUI programs, we have quite a few. It depends on how many times you've actually been arrested for DUI. So worst one, what we call wet and reckless, probably first offender, 12-hour program. If you have multiple offenders, there's another program that you can participate in. So again, just telling, people make mistakes, and sometimes it takes a few times before they actually understand that they have a problem and they need services. So that's just explaining to you that there's multiple levels of programs. Next slide. And then, as I said earlier, our collaborative courts, we partner a lot with the courts sort of as an alternative to really remaining in custody. If people are, instead of, again, being in jail, that they can participate in many of our programs. We support and are at the courts. So we attend them and really try our best to engage people to attend services. Again, within the sort of the treatment court agreement, obviously. Referrals are done through our partners from the Sheriff's Office, Correctional, Health, and Probation. Again, even when they're incarcerated, we try very hard to engage with them, and I think you heard that last time from our in-custody colleagues. So collaborative courts. Next slide. One of the things that we really are grateful about is the opportunity to be in the field. So we have what we call IMAT services. So what we've seen is these are people who have chronic, harmful alcohol and opioid use problems. Many of the people that we are seeing that are in our IMAT program are being seen at the San Mateo Medical Center emergency department. So because of their use, really keep cycling in and out the emergency department, right? So again, and so there's also, we're seeing the people that are engaged in our IMAT services are connected to our criminal justice or law enforcement. So they've either sort of picked up an arrest. And then really, hopefully in this process, get them motivated to really think about stopping alcohol use or use. What we do, though, is we link somebody who that we identify with a case manager. So we do a screening with them in the medical center or on the streets and start really linking them to detox or sobering centers, and then really try to work with them to what we call go beyond the first stage of change, which is I have no issue, I have no problem. Really, that's the goal. And one of the things, if somebody says to me, you know what, today I've been here 5 times now, I think I'm kind of ready, our IMAT case manager will say, wow, okay, here, we can really transport them right now, here and then, to whatever agency that will be providing the services. So we're not waiting for 5 hours or 6 hours. This IMAT manager is saying, we have the opportunity right now. We're going to get you to the service that you need. So again, right there, right now. Okay, next line. And then, while many of our services are actually provided outside of custody, we work very closely with the sheriff's office and our correctional health partners, right? So we have, again, a treatment case manager that goes to the jail. We have an IMAT, or medication-assisted treatment case manager that goes to the jail, and McGuire, and really try to engage people in services. We have a new IMAT case manager that actually works with case manager in the jail to really try to see if there's anybody who's really interested in getting linked to services. And so the goal really is, even inside, even in custody, we are trying to really get them be interested in services, because we know if you start them early, there's a more likelihood that actually people will be interested in that work, in those services. And I think I'm close to my last slide. I feel like this is sort of a Hail Mary, if quoting the football analogy here, not that I'm a football fan. And the last one that I want to really emphasize is housing remains to be a big issue. So in our substance use programs, we have a variety of supports to get people housed while either getting treatment or getting linked to services. So we have, for example, recovery residences, right? So we have beds for men that really want to be in a secure, safe, alcohol, drug-free housing. So this is actually licensed by the Department of Healthcare Services. So most of the people or the individuals in this recovery residence get treatment outside the residence. They can stay in that residence for about 24 months, right? So while they're in the recovery, they don't have to think about where am I going to go, right? So we know that people are often worried about, especially when they leave custody, finding places to go. And then another version, which is a lesser intensive program, is called SLE, or Sober Living Homes. Pretty much same idea. These are drug-free, alcohol-free places. But the thing with sober living environments, these are mostly folks that have justice involved. And the person that's participating actually will do a little bit of self-pay as sort of part of the program. And we have much more leeway to actually get people that are not necessarily within behavioral health to actually live in what we call SLE, or sober living homes. And then the last one, in partnership with the Department of Housing, we have some housing vouchers specifically for people who have substance use issues, right? So part of the criteria here to avail of this housing voucher for people who have substance use, that you have a disability based on your addiction issue. So again, not only do we house you and we give through that voucher, we also provide the case management. So I think that was it. And I don't know if you, wow, that was a record, 27 minutes. Okay. So I don't know if you have time or specific questions, but I'm happy to answer them.
Chester, does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, James.
Thank you so much, Dr. Africa, for that. Question around the Community Wellness Crisis Response Team and the PERT team. What's the difference? I see that there is a law enforcement official and a mental health personnel that works together. How are they different? I didn't quite get that.
So PERT is in partnership with the Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
The Crisis Wellness Response are actually partners with the cities.
Okay.
The city's PD.
Got it.
So that's the difference.
So similar, but it's just separated from PD and...
There's a little bit nuance in the our role with the PERT is actually more, we're the follow-up.
Okay.
In CWCRT, they're literally the crisis response.
Gotcha. And how the response, the folks that responds and not the aftercare, how is that staffed? My understanding is through the PDs that there might be one or two officers that are trained and not enough time in the day or personnel to be available 24/7.
So what we know in the crisis wellness response, they're usually about 8 to 5 or 9 to 6. And I think similar also with the Sheriff's Office, but in our mobile crisis, it's 24/7. So we actually are very lucky that in partnership also with many of our law enforcement, that they have lots of officers who are trained in what we call crisis intervention training. So these are folks that go to a 40-hour training specifically to understand the nuances with behavioral health. So, I obviously don't know what they go through in their academy, but this is an extra 40, at least a 40-plus hour training that our law enforcement goes through. And I think there's also a new version now, the ECIT, which is the enhanced CIT. So there's another level so that there's more compassion, more sort of a different perspective when responding to a behavioral health crisis. So we are now hearing that when people are calling, based from what our colleagues that answer the phone, that they are actually sometimes saying, can a CIT trained officer respond to this crisis when they're calling, for example, 911 and being dispatched by law enforcement?
So with the sheriff's office, deputies, are there trained deputies that will
Yes.
be able to respond with the mental
In
health?
partnership with the clinician, with our clinician.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you so much, Dr. Africa.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Kimberly. Can you say your last name for me so I don't? Haciano. Thank you so much. To talk about our introduction to the Sheriff's Data Dashboard.
Would it be possible for me to share my screen?
I'm going to make you a panelist, so please accept that.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. I am Kimberly Hanciano. I'm the Director of Technology Services for the Sheriff's Office. Thank you for having me here this evening and staying a little late to allow me to showcase our Sheriff's Office Transparency Portal and some of the work we're doing to expand on our data visualizations. So I know Assistant Sheriff Fox showed our mission statement earlier this evening. In particular, I want to call out the second sentence where we talk about our commitment to seeking creative and effective ways to work with and listen to the needs of our residents, businesses, and stakeholders. I think this is where we speak to the sheriff's desire to create transparency, to provide more information and data that the residents are requesting, and to be proactive about that, not just responsive to those requests. And that's where we lean into the creation of our transparency portal that's currently available on our website. It was created in summer of 2022, and the data categories, which I will walk through in a moment, are listed on this slide. The data is refreshed on a quarterly basis. So on a calendar year, 2 quarters behind, which just allows us to give us some time to validate the information before we post it. So as an example, today is October 16th. So that is a part of calendar year quarter 4. So on the website, you will see quarter 2, April through June of this year's calendar data. So on our website main page, we do have an icon here for the transparency portal. And that's where, when you click on that, it will launch our transparency site. And we have several tabs of information that are listed across the top bar here. Starting first with employee demographic data. So to respond to your earlier question, this is where our demographic information is shown for our employees. So we talk about our race and ethnicity, our gender identifications, our military status for all of our staff. And there's some additional graphics down below. So just to walk through a few of these as examples of some of the interaction that you can have with these screens, we do showcase our eviction data. There is a map view as well as counts and trends over time. There are opportunities on some of these screens to click through and select a city or filter, and that will zoom in on the map and then allow that to highlight that polygon, and then you can click on that further and see some additional information populated. Another tab, as an example, is our crime and arrest data, which again is updated every quarter. But there is an additional tab here beyond the surface data that's shown on this page. There's a link here to a crime graphics map, which when you click on this will launch a site that we've had for longer than 2022. This is directly tied to our criminal records. So it is a map that has categories of data that's showcased, and this is updated actually more frequently. It's updated as soon as the police report is completed and approved. So this is just some of a glimpse of the current data that we show on our transparency portal. Some of the things that we know, though, is that the data is very limited. One, this is a very manual process, so updating it every quarter and only showing one quarter at a time as opposed to historical trend. That's something that we'd like to expand upon further. RIPA, as an example, there are many agencies that dig a lot deeper into the details and the analytics of this. We show some surface level data every quarter, and we want to dig into this more. You know, that's Sheriff Corpus's commitment, is to provide greater transparency, to turn data into information with more context and color. And so we are working with a new vendor, and I believe Bob Scales from Police Strategies is on the call. Bob, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. So Bob is going to be able to walk through some mock-ups of some of the new transparency portal screens and pages that we're doing, and digging into a few samples of the data to kind of show where we're headed. So can we provide Bob with a screen share opportunity? Thank you.
I believe you need to.
Oh, sorry. There you go.
Okay, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So my name is Bob Scales. I'm the CEO of Police Strategies LLC, and our main focus is helping law enforcement agencies collect, analyze, and report on their data. We do primarily use of force data, but we do stops and arrests and other data elements as well. We're currently working with about 100 agencies in 8 states, including San Jose PD, Richmond PD, Daly City PD, and Vallejo PD in the Bay Area. And what I'm going to show you today is just a simple mock-up of some of the data that we've obtained from the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office has a system called iPro, where they enter data on their use of force. And so we have a partnership with iPro that allows us to extract the data from their system. And so that data was put into a dashboard, and I'm going to walk you through some of the dashboards that were built using this data. Now, we have data from January 2023 until July 2024, and that includes a total of 54 incidents and subjects that had force used against them. There were 87 deputies that were involved in those use of force incidents, and they used force 151 times, because there could be multiple deputies involved in one use of force incident. You heard earlier about the different bureaus in the Sheriff's Office. We can filter the data based on the bureau. So headquarters bureau, which is the largest, obviously has the most use of force at 10, and then some of the contract cities as well are here. We have all the information is geocoded, so we have the actual incident locations. We have the original call types, so you can see that 57% of all use of force is in response to a call for service, whereas about 26% is the result of a pedestrian stop or a vehicle stop. We have by month, on average, in the last year and a half, there are about 3 use of force a month. And what what I've seen from other jurisdictions that are similarly sized to the sheriff's office, this is a pretty low number in terms of the total number of uses of force. We have it by month, by weekday, by time and hour, and then day of the week and time of day. Now, with all of these dashboards, they're not just static reports, they're all interactive. So whatever the user is interested in drilling down on, all you have to do is click on it. So for example, if we wanted to just look at the use of force in the headquarters bureau, then all we have to do is click on that. If we wanted to say, I want to see the headquarters bureau and calls for service, then we click on that, and then we're looking at those four incidents. So there's virtually an unlimited number of queries that the public can do on these different dashboards. The dashboards are also highly customizable. So we've been doing this for about 10 years, so we get a lot of feedback on our public dashboards from members of the community, and we can make adjustments to the dashboards based on what the community is most interested in. Another dashboard looks at the types of force tactics that were used by the officers. And so here on the left, we see that most of the use of force are actually physical force, and very few intermediate weapons were used. This is the pointing of a firearm. There were 7 of those, but there are only 2 projectile weapons used and 2 ECWs, electronic control weapon or taser. So virtually all the use of force used by the sheriff's office in the last year and a half has been physical. As a result, when we look at the injury rates, we see that the injury rates are quite low and the injuries are relatively minor. And that's because of the primarily physical force. We have demographics on the officers or the deputies involved. So we have the deputy gender, the deputy race, years of service, the rank, and we also have the number of deputies using force in each incident. So again, these are only the deputies that were involved in at least one use of force incident in the last year and a half. We have a lot of details on the subjects, and there's a lot of different ways that we can analyze the demographics and disparities in the data. So if we're looking at gender, we see obviously that 89% of all use of force incidents involve a male subject and only 11% female subject. This is typical what we see in all other jurisdictions, whereas officers, deputies can only lawfully use force if there's some level of resistance or flight or threat or assault, and males are more likely to engage in those types of behaviors than females. By race, we can see that just over half are Hispanic, 24% white, 11% black, Asian Pacific Islanders 7%, and 4% Native American. There's obviously a lot of controversy and issues about racial disparities in policing data. One of the things that we tend to focus on is not using population as a benchmark to measure those disparities, because there's a whole host of reasons why that presents a false narrative. And so what we focus on when we look at racial disparity analysis are reported crimes, the demographics of reported crime suspects, and then the demographics of arrestees. And so when you see racial disparities in either reported crime suspect or arrestees, those may be indicative of racial bias, whereas racial disparities with the population are not.
Excuse me, before we go on, can you explain that a little bit more? Why population? Why you wouldn't use population?
Sure. So it's a long explanation, but I'll give you the nutshell version. I mean, there are many reasons why. So, for example, everyone in your population is not at equal risk of coming into contact with the police. So, for example, juveniles. Usually juveniles make up about a quarter of the population, but they're only 4% of use of force. And that's obviously because, children in elementary school or nursery school are very unlikely to be committing crimes and coming into contact with the police and being arrested and having force used against them. Similarly, senior citizens are much less likely to come into contact with the police and be involved in criminal activity. And yet, if you use them in the population, we're assuming that everybody is at equal risk of coming into contact with the police, which is just not true. But it has to be true if you use population as a benchmark. Another big problem with using population is what population do you use? Do you use the population of a census tract, or the entire county, or the entire state? Because what you'll find is a lot of the people that the sheriff's deputies will contact are not residents of San Mateo County, or not residents of the local city. And so using the local population as a benchmark is just completely irrelevant in those situations. So those are the two sort of main reasons, where if you're looking at arrests, so almost all use of force is a result of an arrest or some kind of custodial stop. And so if 10% of your arrests are Black individuals and 10% of your uses of force are Black individuals, then there's parity. That's what you would expect to see. But if 10% of your arrests were Black and 30% of your uses of force were Black, then there's a question that needs to be addressed, which is, why is it that officers are more likely to use force against Black arrestees than, say, white arrestees? And that's something that can be examined by looking at the individual incidents to determine the reason for that disparity. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. We also have data, and again, this is just data that is in the iPro database. So we did not create this database. These are just the fields that it collects. And so there were 7 individuals that were listed as homeless or transient of the 54. That's 13% of all use of force incidents. We typically see, if your jurisdiction has a high homeless population, typically we see use of force associated when they're trying to be moved out of an encampment or something and they refuse to go, and the officers may have to use some level of force to remove them from the site. We also can see here, these are the most serious crimes that were referred to prosecution for individuals that had force used against them. So you can see that the most common one are violent felonies. And this is what we've seen in other jurisdictions, is that violent felons are the most likely to resist arrest, flee, or threaten or assault the officers, followed by violent misdemeanors. We don't see a lot of drug crimes or warrant arrests or obstructing. Those are less frequently involved in use of force incidents because the subjects are less likely to resist. So those are and again, these are just mock-ups. These aren't the final dashboards. There will be a lot more work and development that is done, not only on the use of force dashboards, but on RIPA data and other data sets. And those will all be presented on the Sheriff's Office website in interactive dashboard format. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Bob before I flip back to my rest of my presentation?
When you talk about, because you talk about use of force and you use race, is there a way that you can just look at one thing like a contact? Because when you put the two together, to me, it seems like there's an assumption that there's something else that's happening. So part of the problem with disparities is just the initial contact, because that can cause a lot of issues moving forward. So how is that addressed?
Yeah, so for our, again, this is iPro data that isn't generated. When we do a full use of force assessment using our force analysis system, we actually go to the police reports and the officer narrative statements to look at the full context of the use of force incident. So in order to understand a use of force incident, you have to know everything relevant that happened before the officer used force. You need to know the dynamics between the officer and the suspect during the force, and you need to know what happened after the force incident. And you need to be able to analyze the force under the relative legal standards. So that's a very involved process that we do with our full system. And the most data systems like iPro that are out there, they're just collecting basic statistics, which is good to know, but you can't do a full analysis of the use of force incidents with that kind of limited data.
So James, too, because I was wondering the same thing.
Can I follow up there real quick?
Yeah, can I? Well, I just want really quickly is just to say, like, I was thinking the same thing, and for me, he's talking about use of force, and I think we're thinking about risk ratios and contact.
And that's why I'm going to follow up with this,
Yeah.
this next question, because when we talk about collecting the RIPA data, how does that guide your work? My understanding is you just collect that and you report it to whatever agency you have to do, but how does that make inform the work that you're doing? And we're talking about here in San Mateo County, so the numbers are going to be what the numbers are, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I may,
Right.
if I may, Bob. So we are going to do a lot of work to expand upon the details within our RIPA data. So right now on our transparency portal, there is a tab for RIPA information, but it is very surface level, similar to the sort of standard statistics that the DOJ will report. So we do want to start to analyze, you know, what type of stop, the reason for the stop, and compare that to the racial demographics of the person who was stopped, or the perceived demographic. So there's those types of analyses that we can dig into, that Bob has already started to work on with other agencies, and that's definitely where we want to go, is to start adding those types of layers to the data and showcasing it to sort of an equivalent level of depth that you are seeing with the use of force data as in this mock-up. Hope that answers your question. Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Bob before I flip back?
I think my last question is just when, I know he's working on it, when do we expect it to go live?
Yes, I have that.
Okay.
Thank you. Flip that to my screen. Okay. So, roadmap. So we are targeting for our new and improved transparency portal to be released by January 1st of next year. So we are working with Bob to provide him the information. We're working on ways to automate that data so we can refresh it more frequently and on a faster cadence where possible. And to also, as he's show a greater historical narrative, so we're not just updating it in quarterly cycles. You can see back to, you know, at least January of 2023 through current. In addition to expanding on all of the transparency portal tabs that we already have and digging into that data deeper to the level of depth that we just showed with the use of force, we also want to add new data categories. So a few examples. One is bicycle safety data, which has come up quite a bit at our CARES meetings that the sheriff hosts. So we do want to dig into that information and be able to showcase a lot of that data around what our office is doing to provide services and statistics on bicycle safety. Similarly, adjacent the employee demographic information, we want to showcase how we're faring in our initiative for 30 by 30, which is the sheriff's goal to have 30% of our workforce female by the year 2030. And you mentioned some of the innovative programs that we're already starting to work with, you know, such as the Women's Boot Camp. We are creating, you know, brand new facilities like our daycare center to try to attract more families and parents and accommodate certain of those services to help with recruiting. We also have our new sheriff's office building that has better female-based facilities, lactation rooms, privacy rooms, and the like. So I think we're doing a lot in that space as well, and we want to showcase our target goal and how we're faring as we approach 2030 as well. So those are other categories that we're already focusing on trying to showcase with our new portal. And we also welcome all the feedback. Short of an IA tool earlier this evening, I have been writing down notes of some of the other categories of information that have been mentioned here, such as like the applicant pools versus the hiring trends over time, some of the patrol demographics, which maybe is another way we might be able to expand upon the employee demographics and break that out in another visual. So we are welcome, you know, we accept all of that feedback and input, and we'll do the discovery on those data sets to see what information is accessible and then how we can possibly present that on that new portal moving forward.
Just for clarification, the
Yes.
30 by 30 is 30% female staff in the whole department or deputies?
Department total, yes? Yes, department total.
So in the whole department. So that means staff, administration, clerical.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. How does the sheriff's office compare to other agencies in the Tri-County area relative to salary and benefits? How would you rank them as?
I don't know the personnel salary and benefit ranking information. I'm not sure if that's something that lower end.
Lower end? Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you so much. All right, are there any other comments from any of the members? No? All right, open it up for public comment.
Members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 5, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or bring a speaker slip up to the clerk during this time. We do have one speaker slip. Trina Patton, please come up to the podium and begin when you're ready.
Good evening. I'll try to keep this quick because I know it's late. Trina Patton from Belmont. I wanted to make a comment regarding Assistant Sheriff Fox's presentation on the Beyond the Call with the goal of going above and beyond. And while I think that's a perfectly good goal to attempt to reach, whether or not the Sheriff's Office is actually successful at going beyond the call, at going above and beyond, that information should really come from the community and not the Sheriff's Office. A real partnership with the community requires that feedback be able to come from the community without having to go a run through the Sheriff's Office. The sheriff can't know if their work or how their work is being received without hearing from the community. And that's why I think it's important and necessary that there's a feedback loop that doesn't have to go through the Sheriff's Office. And I know I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it. I think that complaints and commendations need to be received by an independent party, and I happen to think that this body is a good body for that to happen through. I also think in the spirit of real transparency, it would be great if the sheriffs and the Sheriff's Office supported that sort of information coming to an independent party. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last call for public comments. There are no speaker slips or hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now moving on to our last item, which is a discussion of the treat. I know this is supposed to be 20 minutes, but I'm going to say we kind of move through this quickly because it's 9 o'clock. The first item is just a debrief of the correctional facility tours. Most of us went on tours of both of the jails here in San Mateo County, and I don't know if anyone had anything that they would like to share from those tours. That's it. Any other comments from anyone that they would like to share?
I'd like to.
Sure, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. I think there were some, let me get my notes. There were some things that I observed that some of the mental health programs that were offered at the facilities, after they're released into society, or if you want to call it the community, there really isn't any like real like follow-up that the sheriff can be responsible for, because they're kind of let out and then they go into programs maybe or maybe not. So that was probably one of the main things that I saw was, it's a sheriff's program, and then after these people go into the community, there are, maybe they're put in programs, maybe they're not. And these nonprofits that are referred to, is there an evaluation process that the county has with the Board of Supervisors if they're receiving funding in order to be that second half of whatever their rehabilitation services? Is there a measure for that? And I don't know if there is, but I think that's something that I saw that needs to be addressed, speaking to some of the workers that were inside the facility there.
Oh, I don't know if that was you'd have to answer that right now. Yeah, it's okay.
That's a good reference.
I can
that's at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I'll be thinking of it then. But I do want to say that that's actually something that's a big focus of the county. Actually, two parts of that. One is measuring the success of where we're putting our dollars. So through the Measure K program, we're trying to bring in a lot more evaluation. So we're trying to improve on that as a county, is make sure we're evaluating the success of the programs. So that's a big focus of the CEO's office, and we'll see how that plays out over the next few years. And then just very briefly, the handoff between the jail and behavioral health and the folks in the programs outside to facilitate success of folks and not cycling back in and out of custody is something that is a huge challenge, but also a big focus. And Dr. Africa could talk about it. The teams meet on this quite a bit, and there are certain programs, including CalAIM, that are coming forth to provide some additional funding and to facilitate work on that. But that's always going to be a big challenge. So we can talk more, certainly, and provide more information about that. But you're correct in identifying that as a frustration and as a point of emphasis for folks who are working in the criminal justice impacted field.
I have one more, and that's the McGuire facility, the aging, and it's something that it's been there for years and years and years, and current sheriff's administration, took over the facility, of course, with years and years of aging and involving structural equipment, planning, and of course maintenance of the equipment there and of the jail, and it's it maybe needs a little bit of help, relative to the actual structure and maintenance of it. So I think that may be an issue also. Okay, thank you.
Shirley? Yes, go ahead.
I'll make this quick. Okay, I had a few impressions, and that was I did not see a lot of inmates or programs in action, and I went in on Wednesday. With the exception of the kitchen and the jobs train culinary program. It's the only one I saw. I also noted that the only place I saw flyers to vote were in the women's dorm, so I'm not surprised that that's where they're registering. And there was also the Service League getting the information out to the people, apparently. I asked what would make the life easier for correctional officers, and one said if they had more than 20 tablets per cell, per whatever, pod, right, because they can only let out 20. So then you have everybody locked up much more often. And then the other comment I have is that it seems that there's no incentive for the correctional officers to stay more than 15 years here because, and apparently there's more lucrative places like San Francisco, Santa Clara, and Alameda in terms of retention. So, I mean, that's totally different, but something that we should be thinking about.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I just want to echo the same from Shirley, and we went on different days. And actually the concerns were very similar as far as iPad stuff, and also, working towards, retirement and planning and things of that nature. Something that came out to me that really struck me was the idea of people, and this is just me, coming in from out of state to work, and what that looks like for themselves and their families, especially with the time that they're being asked to work. So that was definitely eye-opening for me. And then just wondering, as far as protocol, when folks come in and out as visitors, how often is that checked? And how consistent is that amongst staff? Because I saw some discrepancies there. Would love to talk a little bit more about that. Don't have the time, but would love to talk about that.
I went on the same tour as James. So first, I just want to thank everyone that helped arrange it, and for the members of the staff that took the time out to take us on the tour, because it was a full day, and we spent a couple of hours in each one of the jails. I also am just very grateful. Like, everyone that we went to talk to took time to talk to us and answer our questions, and it was, very honest, vulnerable transparency in answering the questions that we asked, because we asked some pretty tough questions, and they answered everything. That's not an easy thing. They don't know us. They're just meeting us for the first time, and really giving us just grace and sharing how they feel with complete strangers, or giving information to complete strangers and trusting us with it. So I'm really thankful for that. I also, because of the day we went, there were no programs happening, because I believe we went on Friday, and there's no programming happening on Friday. So maybe trying to go back, depending on what I pick, to see programming in action. And I also will say, like, the difference between the two, and how, we have our newer correctional facility that we're told inmates don't choose because of the way they're housed, how many people are in each cell. And just thinking, that sat with me for a while, the way, just dealing with the culture that's happening inside our correctional facilities, to where people would rather be in an older jail with access to less programming, so that they don't have to be housed with other inmates because of fear of safety, because of prison culture, etc. And and then, as someone who's never experienced that, trying to give advice on how to make that better, and realizing, like, my privilege and the limitations around the understanding around that. And then I will also say that just hearing about the biggest service that's provided in those spaces is mental health services, and that, what it says about us as a society, that our places of incarceration are the largest provider of mental health services. That you have to be arrested and get a felony in order to, or do some sort of minor crime or a higher level of crime in order to get access to services and your medication, and that it's really hard to get it any other way. So the position that we put, law enforcement shouldn't be dealing with some of these things, and taking some of the things that we put in their scope and purview as a society, we need to remove. And that's a much higher level conversation. But just hearing the numbers and the data, and walking into a prison, and really walking into a mental health hospital in one of the wings. So I was really moved, and afterwards had to sit in my car for a little while and think before driving and heading home. So it was very eye-opening. I'm very glad that I went. And then just also, again, hearing a lot about the changes in the new way that they're doing things now that Sheriff Corpus has been elected and been in charge, and talking about some of those changes, especially in the amount of services that are being offered. And we've heard some of those here. So I'm taking all of those things into consideration when we have our retreat. So I don't know if anyone has anything else. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying, and a lot of it sat with me. I sat with it for a while, and regarding mental health, I was concerned, of course, for the people who are inmates, but I was also really concerned for the people who have to monitor and work there all the time, and that it's like hyper alert, hyper vigilant all the time. And so I was concerned even just about about mental health of the deputies, the officers, and that they talked a lot about the overtime, that it's just too much overtime and how many days in a row that they're working. I lost another, I had another point, but I can't remember it right now, but that was, I'm just agreeing with a lot of what you said, and I appreciate it. And just that it's a setting where, because it's color-coded, you saw so many people who were there for mental health problems. I asked if there was a high season, and it was when it gets cold. When the weather gets really bad, people need a place to be, and that's an odd choice or decision, but they said there were people that just said, I need a place to stay. And again, I just thought something's really wrong in our society if those are the options that people have. So anyway, yeah, I was really glad to be there. And I thought, I felt like we were talking to the cream of the crop. The guys were so good, sharing all their information with us. And I did appreciate their time.
Sure, go ahead, Rob.
Rebecca had me remember something that when we were on our tour, where they mentioned some of the correctional officers were being trained to carry firearms, and some of the use of force, like pepper spray and maybe tasers, could be used by those correctional officers, and instead of bringing some of the deputies to do some of the transports or something where they were sick, and it would get the patrol or deputy force without coming into the jail and going out of service and shorting people that were on the street. And I remember the gentleman that was with us had mentioned that, and I don't know if there's a program that.
It's a correctional deputy.
Oh, is it?
And they're going to be used for, a lot of times we have folks that need to go to.
Do you want to just come up to the podium so folks on Zoom can hear you? Sorry about that. Yeah.
Share your wisdom, please.
Good evening. I'm Dan Perret. I'm the undersheriff for the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. So, Commissioner, the position that you're talking about is called a correctional deputy. Right. And so, a lot of times we have folks that have medical issues that need attention past the service that we provide in either McGuire or Maple. So they have to be transported to a medical facility. So when they go out there, the past practice has been it's deputy sheriffs that are responsible for the custody. So the sheriff created a position for correctional deputy. So those folks are going to be armed as they need to be and have peace officer powers while they're in that position, just to transport people back and forth for security. Because sometimes folks that go to the hospital, some of them can be back and forth in the same day. Others require multiple days, and that's, and those are, that's 24 hours in the day, several shifts. So that's, that was the sheriff's thought about trying to take the burden off of patrol, taking deputies and putting them in the hospital. So, and it's also a position that a lot of correctional officers were interested in, and hopefully we'll be able to build on that as our staffing continues to increase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, commissioners, for the compliments on the jail tours. And I think you said cream of the crop, and you talked about the trust that they showed you, and that's just, I think that's the spirit of transparency and honesty that Sheriff Corpus has inspired and wants as part of our daily operations. So, there are a lot of folks who work a lot of hours, and the sheriff's worked very hard to have everybody in the sheriff's office try to contribute and try to lighten the load for everyone, so it's not, if all of us have a task and this side of the room does the lion's share of the work, then the burden of that over time is gonna wear on folks. So part of the strategy is that we're all, we're trying to get everybody to contribute in a small way, or not in a small way, but contribute to the effort to lighten the burden for everyone. But in terms of wellness, the sheriff's office, the sheriff is very focused on those kind of things, and there's a lot of different programs connected to wellness, and just recognizing, the sheriff's a very, in my experience, I'm new to the sheriff's office, but she's a very thoughtful person, very genuine, and she just cares about people. And she's done a lot of things in terms of providing training and equipment, and we talked about lactation stations. That reference was made earlier. The chairs and massage chairs.
Yeah, massage chairs.
Yeah.
For the side, we have a therapist that's available to see that 24/7 anonymous. They just have to pick up the phone and we get services. We have healthier food options in the correctional facilities because they can't go outside. So that we also have yoga on the computer. We can actually log in and do it while we're in their stations. We have the computer, there's different programs, meditation. There's a ton that we're doing. So Rebecca, we feel the same way. The sheriff
Victor,
And another thing, ma'am, that's very important to the point that you made about the number of hours that people work in the correctional facilities is, I think you really keyed in on an important issue, which is, when somebody is in a pod and there are, 25, 35, incarcerated people in there, they have to be vigilant because they are responsible for the safety of all those folks, and they have to keep the peace and de-escalate things and kind of forecast ahead. And they're all very good about talking to each other from shift to shift, because that is, those pods become our communities of those groups that are in there, and, they have to understand, what potential disputes there are and how that can turn into something, something violent. So they're working to prevent all of that. But the staffing piece of it is very important, because I know that you probably saw a lot of, you saw pods like that on the tours. And one of the advantages that folks have who are on patrol and all of the bureaus that you saw is that, they can pull over and get a cup of coffee somewhere, or they can get out, walk around, walk a beat, and talk to people in the community. And that is, there's a greater, and interact with their coworkers. And there's a greater challenge with staffing levels when they're not correct to keep the facility safe, including for the folks who work there. So having safe staffing levels there for our folks means that they get to do things like take a break, or have lunch, or sit down with someone, with one of their coworkers, and talk about the things that are going on, and avail themselves to the wellness opportunity. So that's why staffing, like you pointed to, is a huge concern and strategy that the sheriff is involved in, in discussions that we're involved in daily.
do you want to come up here too, Victor, so they can hear you?
Yeah. So
160.
one of the things that we've and I don't want to I don't want to give you the number, and maybe the chief of staff can correct me, but I think that since the sheriff took office, she's reduced the vacancy rate in the sheriff's office by 11%. Yeah, by 11%. And I came from San Francisco Police Department in July. I retired from there. Worked there for about 33 years. And law enforcement all over the country are facing staffing shortages. And since the sheriff took office, she implemented things like the recruitment team that she picked, which has resulted in hiring 160 people. Shouldn't tell stories this late at night, but we have one lieutenant who oversees that, and I went in to see him a couple of times over the last 2 days, and every time I went into his office, he had somebody in there who was being interviewed and who was in the final stages of being hired. So I don't want to give you the wrong numbers, But there are a lot of folks, I think we're swearing in, I want to say 20 people? Yeah, swearing in 20 people this month alone, and all of these things happen, and it's about, like you said, Madam Commissioner, about retention and, like having proper staffing levels and having people be able to work somewhere where they can attend to their mental health and not feel like they're on at every moment and have to work extended hours. That definitely helps us with retention, so.
In the November 6th meeting, we're going to be having a topic of retention, so you'll probably have to come back and repeat some of that, and
Okay.
we'll hear from Victor as well.
I'll have
Yeah.
the numbers locked in.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, we can't hear you.
Are you keeping up with attrition, like, people retiring and things like that?
I think we
Has
could.
that been working out too?
I think we could bring that back at the next meeting too, just so we can
Okay,
wrap.
we'll bring it back.
Yeah, because you're coming to talk about, yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Just one last thing that I remember about the tour is a concern about that outdoor space, or the lack of outdoor space.
Mhm. Thank you. So really quickly, on the retreat, we have one more meeting and then we have the retreat. So asking the commissioners to think about topics that they want to drill down on as part of being, the advisory committee. Like what topics would you like to drill down on, and thinking about those topics and bringing that list with you to the retreat. We have one more meeting beforehand. I am meeting with our facilitator on October 25th, and really trying to work it so Bill and I could be the main leads for the meeting, and using a lot of the practices that I've used in our school board in order to give direction, and in this, in more in an advisory position, and to be more outcomes focused in terms of the topics that you pick. I think the more broad you are, the worse it is. I think, and then not thinking so much, I put the buckets in inputs, outputs, and outcomes. I think the inputs and the outputs, so how things are run and how we get to things, that's usually what staff and administration does. And I like to be more outcome focused, like what do we want to see happen, not so much the how of it, because then getting into that weed, you may run into a roadblock that may stop you from getting to the actual outcome that you want to get to. So for example, when we're talking about retention or staffing, having an outcome of increasing staff and seeing like in certain demographics and having a starting number and an ending number by so many years, that's usually an outcome that I try to give to my superintendent. And then it's up to her to figure out how to get there. But those are the kind of things that I find have the most success and get the less pushback. So in thinking about all the topics that we're hearing about and picking those topics and really picking topics that we can have outcomes that are measurable and that we can track. Does that all make sense? Awesome. Yes. Measurable outcomes you definitely want to have, and not given a outcome that is, we would like to see more programs. What does that mean? That could be interpreted in so many ways, and then we'll get something back that we didn't think of. But I think being more, drilling down to specific, drilling down to population, what type of who is the target for this outcome, and what would be I try to frame the goal in the metric of success. Like, this is what it would look like if it was successful. That's what I'm asking for. Okay, and you don't have to come with it completely, but just thinking about that, and then I'm hoping the retreat will walk us through that place to where we'll get to those type of goals, and we'll pick, 4 or 5, and then break into teams of 2. Each of us choose our team, and then that'll be the group that'll do the research. And a lot of the things that we've been asked by the committee, like talk to other sources, stuff, that's the time that we'll do that, and bringing things back to, have check-in sessions where we all are. And then also at the retreat, coming up with a date, like coming up with a timeline on when we need to have things done and when we're going to be ready to present all of our findings to the Board of Supervisors. So having that all discussed at the retreat. Any questions on that? No. Any public comment about that?
We do have one speaker slip.
Okay.
I would like to call Deacon Lauren McCombs.
Oh, bless you. Bless you.
Okay, well, with that, there's no other public comments and no hands raised.
So just on this, there is this list of topics that have come up, and so if you haven't seen it, please look for it. it was here, and then, but I'm sure there are items here that we haven't thought about or people have thought about that aren't on the list. So please review the list, and then it might be helpful to kind of input that to us well before the next meeting so that the list can be expanded. So it's not picking items on the list, but what's missing from the list. Or it may be a topic that's here, but maybe it's not correctly stated. Okay, so that would be really helpful, I think, to kind of make sure that when we go into the retreat, we're not bringing up new topics at the retreat.
Exactly.
And it's already here. And so people can think about it before the
Exactly.
retreat.
Yep.
Thank you.
Should we email them to the both of you?
Sure. Please.
Okay, thank you.
And to the ICAC email
Yeah, the ICAC,
address.
yes, and
that way then
Emma
staff gets it
capture
as
it,
well,
yeah.
because they're putting the list together
Yeah.
for us. And then we're working with staff to clarify the list and make sure it's complete, et cetera.
All right.
And that goes to the public too. I mean, if the public should look at the list, and if there are topics that are missing from the list, or if it's not correctly stated, we welcome that input as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Moving on, do any of us, commissioners or liaisons, have any announcements that they would like to share? No, everyone's going fantastic. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.